Hey, I know it's in our nature to cut a guy some slack, give him the benefit of the doubt, like maybe he was confused or just joking or just maybe really needed a double-double. But this isn't that guy. These aren't those people, and those are not the Rockies. They make a lot of mistakes. They mistake our modesty for meekness, our kindness for consent, our nation for another star on their flag, and our love of a hot, cheesy poutine with their love of a hot, cheesy Putin. They think they can bully us, threaten us, and push us around, but they do not know us. That artificially drawn line they keep talking about, not artificial, and it's not on a map. It's right here. This is the land that Terry ran, the land that Gord sang about. This is the birthplace of peanut butter and ketchup chips and yoga pants. It is the land of universal health care and the bench clearing for all, of innovation and optimism and getting her done. This is the land of the peacekeeper and the Shawinigan handshake. Are we perfect? No, but we are not the 51st anything. We are the first to unite in a crisis, the first to build bridges, not walls, and the first to stand on guard for thee. My name is Jeff, and we are Canadian. Thank you.
No, Jeff, thank you. Jeff Douglas is the hero we need today, isn't he? That is the same guy that was Joe in the beer commercial about a quarter century ago. My name is Joe, and I am Canadian. Jeff Douglas of Truro, Nova Scotia, with a very well-timed new We Are Canadian rant. It has begun circulating online. It made its way to me from a number of you. So thank you for that. And not the traditional music we start the show with, but a very appropriate We Are Canadian rant to start the show today. On this Thursday morning, the 6th of March, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for stopping by, spending some of that valuable time you have here with us. I hope that means we are rewarding you for spending the time here, because it is one of your most valuable commodities, that time, and really appreciate you being a part of the show, whether you're just a passive part and like to listen in on the conversations, or you're an active, interactive participant here on the show. However it is you consume us, thanks very much for being engaged in your community. And plenty of that to talk about today, especially in light of the news that we learned last evening about the passing of a local business leader. But we'll get into that a little bit more in just a few minutes. I did want to start with an email I got from David to Mike at 570news.com. And David raises a really good point around the by-election that the region will not spend money on in order to replace the seat vacated by Rob Deutschman. Regional Council, as you know, deciding instead that it would appoint the person with the next most votes from way back in 2022, because it did not want to spend the $800,000 on a by-election. And David's email says, I agree that $800,000 is a lot to pay for a by-election. And I take no issue with Regional Council saying that we don't have that kind of money. What I would like to know, though, is just how there was no problem finding $750,000 for repairs to a neglected and derelict bomb shelter for which no future use is known. Further, that amount only prevents the building from further deterioration. It does not make it usable, even if we did have a use for it. Which outlay is the greater waste of money? Perhaps if they had held on to the $750,000, they would have enough funding for a by-election. David, I appreciate the email to Mike at 570news.com. I shared with you a bit of a tongue-in-cheek top 10 list yesterday of ways the region could save money and find the $800,000 for the by-election. I did not come up with the money spent just to keep the bunker from collapsing. I don't know. Anyway, a great point made. At the end of all of this, though, what I think is important to remember, and this is this is really the point that frustrates me the most. We have to, I believe, get away from this idea that the cost of holding a by-election is too much. Like, there is no cost too great to uphold our democracy. And I will argue that until my last breath. So we have to move away, I think, from this notion that the cost is somehow prohibitive, right? There should be no price tag attached to our messy and sometimes costly democracy. So let's remember that. But a great example by you, David, as to, ways that we could have found $750 of those $800,000 on the way.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9.
All right, let's get to your Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning. Number 1. Do you remember this call we got early yesterday morning?
A 5-game win streak. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, that's all Chef D had to say. He was trying to pump the tires of the team that shall not be named here on the program. Well, I think Austin Matthews might have been listening yesterday, because we get to start our day today with a little AM on AM in the AM.
Nylander unable to control the puck, but carries into the corner, comes out into the slot, and a shot, stop, scores! Matthews jams it home, and there will at least be no shutout tonight for Aiden Hill, as Austin Matthews gets on the board with a power play goal. Now,
unfortunately, as you can tell from Joe Bowen's complete and utter lack of enthusiasm for that Matthews goal, the Leafs lost last night, 5-2 to Vegas, and that is back-to-back losses for Toronto. Number 2, a winter weather travel advisory is in effect today as rapidly falling temperatures have frozen things over. It's not too bad this morning, but just make sure you take care out there. And with winds picking up through the day, it's going to feel much colder as time goes by today. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, stock markets are set for another day of volatile trading after rallying on news that U.S. President Donald Trump would delay tariffs for a month for vehicles coming through the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement on Trade. The temporary reprieve for autos came after the U.S. imposed sweeping levies on Canadian and Mexican goods. The White House says Trump is open to even more carve-outs. Meanwhile, the federal government has imposed 25% retaliatory tariffs on $30 billion worth of American products, and Ottawa reportedly will not lift any levies if Trump leaves any tariffs on Canada. We'll be talking about the impact on the local economy on our show this morning at 9:30. Number 4, Toyota Manufacturing, which employs thousands of people at its plant in Cambridge, says it has no plans to change its production within the foreseeable future. Toyota says its vehicles are in high demand and it continues to build to plan. At the same time, Toyota Motor Manufacturing says it will continue to work with our federal and provincial governments toward a sustainable solution. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this Thursday morning, Waterloo Region mourns the loss today of Mike Williamson, the co-owner of Central Fresh in downtown Kitchener. Williamson purchased the long-standing grocer back in 1998, and it continues to serve 15,000 weekly shoppers. The family says Central Fresh remains open under the guidance of Mike's family after Mike succumbed to cancer. Donations to the Food Bank of Waterloo Region or the Canadian Cancer Society are being accepted in Mike's honor. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning. I thought, on the note of Mike Williamson's passing, I have seen the outpouring online, and I wondered if you wanted to share a Central Fresh memory with us, or maybe even more specifically, a Mike Williamson memory. The store is open, so that's not going away. The legacy that Mike carried on under his ownership continues, and that's a very good thing. But I'm sure many of us are feeling that loss of not just a business leader, but somebody who cared so deeply about his community. If you want to share a Mike Williamson story, we're all ears. Many a memory of traveling into that midtown, if you will, Kitchener-Waterloo grocer from the time I was a wee lad. I'll share mine, and you can share yours here on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. You know that the minute we begin our show every day, phone lines open up, so we get the chance to hear from you at 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Jeff, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm going to try and be quick because I got a few things I want to cover. First of all, that's very sad about the owner of Central. I think people sometimes lose sight of how important it is to support small local businesses and how it impacts our community. So it's always sad for me. I've been a business owner most of my life to see somebody pass away who has contributed so much to our community. That was my first thing. And my second thing I wanted to say is thank you very much for what you do for our community. I don't know if you ever really think about how you get us all thinking about a lot of things that are very important. So I consider you a huge contributor to our community, too. So I think you should go home and pop a wobbly pop at the end of the day and pat yourself on the back for what you do for all of us, because you keep us all thinking.
Well, Jeff, that is extraordinarily kind of you. And I'll tell you what, I will pop that wobbly pop. I don't know if I'll pat myself on the back, but I truly appreciate your kind words, and I will enjoy a beverage thinking about you tonight. Thank you.
And I've got one other thing I want to cover. When you're talking about the council person and 2 years, choosing the person from 2 years ago, I am beginning to feel like we do not live in a democratic society anymore. Some of the things the federal government has done, some of the things the provincial government has done, and they had no right to do that. That is our choice. I'm really upset about that, because that should have been the community's decision, and they're taking away democracy, and heads should roll for that.
Really well said, Jeff. Thanks for weighing in this morning. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. This is the thing. And I'm going to remind you of this, okay? We are 18-ish months away. The fall of 2026, we will be in our next municipal election. If you, like Jeff, believe that heads should roll for what Regional Council just did, appointed somebody at their own choosing, which it does fly in the face of democracy, then you can roll those heads by not voting back in the councillors who supported this decision to appoint a previous candidate to the chair. So just keep that in mind when the next municipal election rolls around. And I really like what Jeff said about what this show certainly tries to do, and clearly it's landing with Jeff. It's to get us to think. Does every guest that comes on the show match or align with my views or my way of thinking or my way of seeing things? Absolutely not, because I like the guests to get me thinking, and hopefully you as well too. And look, what the provincial government just did with the snap election, which was political opportunism at its finest, also smacks of being anti-democratic. I know the mechanisms exist within legislation that allow for a snap election to be called, but why? Why? Every 4 years gives us a chance as voters, plenty of time, probably a reasonable and fair amount of time to evaluate a government. And then the fixed election date can be just that, the fixed election date. So we could argue the anti-democratic nature of the snap election call too. I think Jeff's onto something. And I hope this does serve to get us thinking, as opposed to, like, I don't want you to get angry. I don't want you to shake your fist at the sky. But I think we should talk about these things openly, and we should think about them. And the fact that you and Jeff and others engage in the show and get thinking about issues, that makes me feel great, because that is exactly what this show is intended to do. I'm still thinking on the memories of trips to Central Fresh Market, which will not end because the building is still there, but its co-owner, Mike Williamson, passing away. We'll share those memories coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. So when I was a wee lad, and I mean a wee lad, I was born, you see, in the old North Ward of Kitchener, Mount Hope, Bright-Up neighborhood. So from our house, and I grew up in an era where I was not alone in, and I'm quite grateful for, having had a stay-at-home parent. My mom stayed home and took care of the brood of 5 kids while my dad was the breadwinner in the family. So because I had a stay-at-home mom, she would take us everywhere. I remember these trips with all 5 kids in tow, into the downtown, Gaudi's and Bud's, etc. And based on where we lived in Mount Hope Breithaupt, it was such an easy walk to Central Fresh because you could cut right through Mount Hope Cemetery. And I remember being with Mom and my brothers and sisters, the stroller, pushing all the kids. Off we would go through the cemetery, past that road, into the back parking lot at Central Fresh and do our shopping there. It was really the family grocery store way back then. And those are my very first memories of Central Fresh. And thinking of that route we would take into it, do you remember back during LRT construction where Mike Williamson, who we've just learned has passed away, the co-owner at Central Fresh, tried to use signage to redirect people through that Mount Hope Breithaupt neighborhood to get into his grocery store through the back entrance to the parking lot? Because why wouldn't he do that? And the city gave him such a hard time. And then Mike would go back out there and put the signs up again, which he should have done. Like, good for him, right? Because it was really difficult on him. And I think the city should have been much more accommodating back then. But anyway, he had a little bit of a renegade's spirit in him. And wouldn't you know, decades later, after those trips to the store with my mom when I was a kid, Central Fresh would become a supporter of our Farwell for Hire fundraising campaign over a number of years, and it just showed the community spirit that Mike really had. I received a message this morning, too, from a fellow business owner, Sandy Nickel, who is the person behind Snickle Fritz Kitchens. Sandy makes a great butter tart, locally sourced and locally made, obviously. And she's also started a series of other things from her Snickle Fritz Kitchens. And she wanted to let me know that Mike Williamson was paramount to my startup of sauces. He supported our small business community, in particular startups, working with them as they navigated through the startup process. His values are carried out through his team, which speaks to his leadership. I'm not telling you this hoping you'll share my name or company name. Please make it all about Mike and the great loss to our community. I should have read the whole thing, Sandy, before sharing your name, but I'm happy to share the name of Snickle Fritz because I love me some butter tarts and you make good ones. And I've seen Sandy at so many different places setting up a booth, selling her sauces and other things. And without the support of another fellow entrepreneur like Mike Williamson, Sandy says it wouldn't be the same business environment for her. So just another reason we miss Mike Williamson, who passed away from cancer, the co-owner of Central Fresh. The building and the grocery store lives on with the family running things just the way Mike intended it to be. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. In light of all this tariff talk, something I think that is important to remember is that we are still a manufacturing community, not like we once were. I recognize that. Long gone are the Bud Automotives and the Lear Seatings and so many others, BF Goodrich, Uniroyal. It goes on from there, Kaufman. But though manufacturing was our traditional base for employment and supported the economy, it remains a vital and vibrant part of the local economy. But 1 in 5 local jobs are in the manufacturing sector. And so when we have tariffs being threatened, paused, imposed, carved out, you name it, it does have an impact here in the region of Waterloo. Tony Lamantia is the president and CEO at the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation and joins us to talk about it. And Tony, when we are facing tariffs of 25% on our goods imposed by the President of the United States, what are we facing as a community in light of these tariffs?
We're facing choppy waters. You're talking about 1 in 5 jobs that is trade exposed because we have these manufacturing jobs, great manufacturing jobs in the region. And that's to say between 55,000 and 60 jobs that are trade exposed. It doesn't mean they're all at risk, but it just means that they are threatened by the cloud of tariffs. And so there's a range of responses that companies are working on, but it's definitely elbows up right now.
The uncertainty that comes with this too, Tony, because it seems like every day there's a change in direction from the U.S. administration. Does that make this more difficult, or is this really just, elbows up and maybe a sign of the way we have to start doing things in the future?
Well, it's a bit of both. The uncertainty does not help the investment environment for sure. You're not going to be making a long-term commitment or any significant capital investments unless you have some visibility on the future, right? And I think if you ask most CEOs, they would say, I could live with a 5 or 10% bump in my cost structure as long as I knew I had 5 to 10 years to figure it out, right? And so that's the kind of that casting the shadow on the investment environment is never a good thing. But in terms of opportunities to change the way we've done business in Canada, absolutely, this is an opportunity for us to finally get our act together on interprovincial trade barrier removal, like I'm talking about free flow of goods, services, people across the country. Long overdue. We're starting to see some good steps in that direction. All premiers and the Prime Minister issued a joint declaration yesterday that basically said we're going to start with free flow of people. So nurses and doctors, licensed professionals should be able to operate anywhere across the country. So that's the first piece. The other is overdependence on one market. It's a big world, and so things like import substitution, export market diversification, these things are going to take time, but you're starting to see companies getting very serious about that. And we have some great support programs, both financial and advisory, from firms like EDC and BDC, and so it just really feels like a moment that we have to meet, individual business leaders, communities, government organizations, civic leaders, so it's game on.
The Canadian Chamber of Commerce issued a report that looks at the region of Waterloo as being the fourth most vulnerable, if you will,
yes,
to these tariffs in the entire country. So
correct.
As somebody in your position, Tony, how much does that concern you?
It concerns me, but, I'm fairly calm, and I say that because the tariffs are ultimately paid by the consumer. And when it comes to automotive, right, we have moved pretty far from Donald Trump's "there's no room to negotiate." Do you remember that? Like literally a week ago? There's no room. And then suddenly you have a ridiculous 1-month reprieve. I am convinced that, mark my words, I'm convinced that the U.S. is going to cave on the auto tariffs. And the U.S. is going to cave on those tariffs because it means mutually assured destruction, right? And it's really going to impact American jobs. So we're in and a number of our companies who are trade exposed have already laid out mitigation plans. They're doing cost impact engineering. They're looking at their debt. They're looking at their profits. They're looking at their value chains. Here's the thing. These supply chains took decades to build. How do you just think about the Auto Pact? Do you think that was a gift to Canada because the U.S. and Lyndon Johnson were really nice guys? Like, come on. This was about making the U.S. auto industry more competitive, building where you sell, more efficiencies, and then you add Mexico to the mix, with NAFTA, and this idea that you can disaggregate your value chain and move all automotive production back to the United States is ridiculous. You're talking about increasing costs by maybe 30%, even higher than the tariff. And who are they going to export to, right? So to me, I think we're going to see a resolution here. But in the meantime, you have to have a plan, right? Failure to plan is a plan to fail, because if Donald Trump really wants, mutually assured destruction of manufacturing jobs, then, all bets are off.
How does an organization like the Waterloo EDC support companies in our region in these choppy waters, as you've described them, Tony?
Yeah, well, we've basically taken a page from the COVID reaction playbook, and we're working with the Chambers of Commerce and Communitech and our EDO partners in the cities and the townships and the region. So what we've set up is 3 working groups. I'm leading one to help trade-exposed companies. We're working with the cities and the townships on that. We've identified those companies, and it starts off with just sitting down and understanding kind of what they're doing, what their challenges are right now, and then it's about directing them to expertise and resources, because something as simple as your importer of record, where you're domiciled, who's accountable for compliance, all that. This is part of the challenges. This is very complex stuff. There is no one-size-fits-all or template, so you need kind of a bespoke approach. And there's a limit to what we can bring to the table, so we've got to direct them to the experts. So that's one of the tables. The other is a small business working group led by the 2 chambers. And the Communitech's leading a tech sector working group. And so we're doing that. We're going to come up with a toolkit of sorts that we will direct companies to, and we're going to learn by doing. I actually don't know how long this is going to play out, but we're ready.
Tony, I appreciate you making time for the show today. Thanks very much for being here.
Anytime, my friend, anytime.
Tony Lamantilla is the president and CEO at the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation, or EDC, and he joins us to talk about the impact of tariffs on the local economy. We're talking between 50 and 60,000 jobs that are trade exposed. That does not mean the jobs will disappear overnight or at all, but it does leave a good number of people in this region, 1 in 5 jobs, more concerned today than they were yesterday. I think that would be a fair way to sum it up. And the Waterloo EDC, along with our Chambers of Commerce, are working to ensure that we can transition into what many have long believed should have been the case, a more self-sustaining economy, breaking down those interprovincial trade barriers. You heard Tony make reference to certifications from one province, be it nurses, whatever the case may be, allowing you to work without recertifying in another province. Teaching would be another example, I think. It just really defies imagination that we would ever have had such barriers in place. But here we are. So we're moving in that direction. But the waters are choppy. It's going to be bumpy for a little while. We heard from Toyota Motor Manufacturing this morning that there are no imminent plans to make any changes to production, and by extension then, there would not be any layoffs looming at one of our region's largest employers in manufacturing. How are you adapting to the new reality that is tariffs with our closest trading partner? And how do you feel about the Canadian approach? I mean, I think Doug Ford put it pretty well. There's no such thing as half pregnant. You can carve out for the big 3 automakers like you have, but until all tariffs are removed on Canadian goods, then our tariffs, our counter tariffs, will remain in place. Pretty strong approach from the Ontario Premier. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
So to me, I think we're going to see a resolution here. But in the meantime, you have to have a plan, right? Failure to plan is a plan to fail, because if Donald Trump really wants mutually assured destruction of manufacturing jobs, then, all bets are off.
There is the important phrasing, I think, to take away from this. And I'm certain that's why, after a conversation, not just with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, but with the CEOs of the big 3 automakers, Donald Trump has carved out and once again applied a pause of another 30 days on tariffs applied to the automotive sector, because it is mutually assured destruction. Maybe not all that well thought out on the part of the U.S. president, but recognizing that this will absolutely impact Americans and American jobs as well. And Tony Lamantia, the president and CEO at the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation, who just joined us for a conversation, spells that out pretty well. I want to remind you what one of our region's largest employers in the manufacturing space, automotive no less, had to say just this morning, that of course being Toyota Motor Manufacturing, which says it has no plans to change its production within the foreseeable future. Toyota says its vehicles are in high demand and it continues to build to plan to meet that demand. At the same time, Toyota says it will continue to work with our federal and provincial governments toward a sustainable solution. So no immediate impact at one of our community's largest employers. Longer term, it's really going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But right now, no imminent plans to change anything. Meantime, our chambers of commerce, both the Greater KW and the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, along with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, have issued their own statements regarding the tariff imposition by the United States. And the chambers say we stand with our colleagues and know that our local businesses in the region of Waterloo will feel the effects of this trade war as well. The chambers will continue to work with local businesses to mitigate the issues from these tariffs and ensure that we remain globally competitive. So there is a lot of work to be done, but that work is being done behind the scenes, as nerve-wracking as this can be for people in this region generally. Talking about it over your dinner tables, probably. Just imagine being one of those people. I remember hearing a comment from, I believe it was Windsor. Anyway, somebody in the automotive industry was quoted on an evening newscast as saying, this is just what comes with being a worker in the auto sector today, right? There's always the threat of a plant closure or a retooling or whatever the case may be. And if you're working in that industry, I used to think mine was volatile in broadcasting. Turns out that automotive is equally, if not more so. And I certainly have a tremendous amount of sympathy for those who are much more directly impacted. But our chambers, our Economic Development Corporation, and others are watching very closely and already beginning the work to ensure that we've got sustainability in our sector and our local economy. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just a few minutes away from your 10 o'clock update in the 570 News Center. Let's get to the phones, hear from you on this Thursday morning. Bob, good morning.
Hey, morning, Mikey. I tell you, we got to put a stop to this now because I know what these guys are doing, the big three. You know, all these little manufacturers around they talk about that build the cars, the little brackets and pieces that we make and ship back and forth. This is what we got to do. They are going to put an order in that's going to drive these guys nuts to work 7 days a week. They're going to load up their little things, and they're going to have enough to run stock for about 2 to 3 months. And when this hits, we'll be boom. So they won't be as damaging on them as it is going to be on us. So we've got to stop these little guys. Tell Ford, hey guys, if they want more money or more parts, don't give it to them. Just give them exactly what we would normally give them, and that's it. We got to hold all this back so they can't rearm their barrels, you know, so it doesn't hurt them as much as it's going to hurt us. We got to stop that.
All right.
That's what they're going to do for the next 30 days.
Interesting. Bob, appreciate the call and the thought on that. Look, we know that the supply chain plays such an important role in automotive. And yes, there are so many pieces within that chain that travel back and forth and cross who knows how many times from one tier 2 or tier 3 supplier to another before ultimately landing at the automotive manufacturer. So Bob says, watch out. Make sure the little guy doesn't get squeezed in all of this. Interesting perspective, and appreciate you sharing it on the show this morning. I just wanted to take a moment to send a huge and sincere thank you to my friend Clive Smith, who took the time to, he must have been listening earlier today because I joked with Christine Clark. I pay a visit to the morning news team around 10 to 9 or 8:50 every morning and do a little preview of what's coming up on the show. And when I got in there this morning, about 10 minutes before 9, I joked with Christine that my cup of coffee, my travel mug, was already empty. I just didn't feel like there was enough coffee today. Clive must have heard that, because lo and behold, what showed up just a few minutes ago and still hot is a cup of coffee from Tim's, along with an envelope with a previously won cup. So Clive must have rolled up the rim and won and shared it with me for my Friday morning fix. That is an incredibly kind gesture, and it's so truly appreciated today. I don't know what it was about the coffee disappearing too fast, but it did today, and I cannot tell you how much it means to me to have this travel mug filled to the brim again, not to mention an extra bonus cup for tomorrow. Clive, thank you very much for your generosity. That's very, very kind of you. I'm going to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then let's talk about some entrepreneurial success in Waterloo, specifically Black female entrepreneurs who have launched, overcome hurdles, and now are building thriving businesses in Uptown Waterloo. That conversation coming up next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Oh, we're having some laughs in the studio, reminiscing about our childhoods. And I say in the studio because I am so pleased to be joined by a couple of Waterloo business owners. Cecilia Smith, who owns C Bakery. So nickname is C. We can call you C today.
Sure, that's perfect.
Thank you very much for being here.
You're very welcome.
And along with C is Natasha Unger, who owns Fire Hall Confectionery. Let me tell you about Fire Hall Confectionery. I love me some candy, Natasha. I love it so much.
Thank you, but actually, my last name is Usher. And it's okay.
No, it's not okay. That was complete. I made this list myself, and thank you for that, Natasha Usher.
And if I can chime in, actually, my last name is Johnston.
We are problematic for you this
Hang
morning.
on 1 second.
Previously perfect.
All right. So no, I have already acknowledged that my guests are perfect. Clearly, the host is a moron.
No,
so okay, Natasha Usher, Fire Hall Confectionery.
Yes.
And Cecilia Johnston,
Yeah.
C Bakery.
You got it.
We got it now.
There it is.
All right. Let's just pretend we started the segment on a much more
Love it.
accurate note. Exactly. C, tell me about the bakery in Uptown.
Yeah, so I own CE Food Experience and the bakery. We're located Uptown Waterloo, attached to Waterloo City Hall. Not to be confused with Waterloo Town Square. There's no bakery in that little skating rink. But I've been in that location now for nearly 3 years. People who know us know that we used to be over on Moore Street beside Len's Mill Store. Business established in 2015, and we do everything on site from scratch. Cater to dietary restrictions. We do a whack ton of cakes, cupcakes, a whole bunch of different breads, pastries. We've got about 55 feet worth of display of pastries and stuff that we bake constantly. And so, yeah, it's me, and I've got a really great small team with me.
I know a number of folks who work for the city, as well as councillors who are around City Hall.
Yes.
And they have been so excited at the arrival of this bakery right attached to City Hall on Regina Street.
Yeah, it's kind of a good little drip for them. They get to have work, and then they come downstairs 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a day. We see people, 5 days a week for some, a couple days for others. But it's a good little relationship that we've got going on there.
Absolutely. Okay, Natasha Usher, tell us the Fire Hall Confectionery story.
So, excuse me, my BFF Kimberly and I, we are dance moms, but we're not those crazy dance moms. And we met a number of years ago through our daughters, and life was lifing, and we had starter husbands that we said goodbye to, and we wanted to open a business together, and we were looking at what were we passionate about. and it was great cars, traveling, and chocolate. And so we settled on chocolate. 10 years, over 10 years together. We produce in Unionville, and everything gets brought into Waterloo, into our Kleinburg location. And we love it.
How did the passion for chocolate come about?
Well, both Kim and I have always loved chocolate. Kim's a baker. And I mean, how can you not?
Yeah.
And I'm originally from Zimbabwe, but grew up in Europe. And so, of course, you're eating European chocolate and coming to North America and then tasting what we call American chocolate. The experience wasn't quite the same. We wanted to have that experience that we remembered from our childhood. I mean, I used to be bribed with the old-fashioned flakies. I don't know if you remember those.
Do I remember those?
Yes. So British chocolate, Swiss chocolate was what my parents used to bribe us with. And as we were saying, we were too scared not to follow the straight and narrow, but the chocolate was a great bonus. So Kim and I settled on chocolate and just decided to dive head first.
But that's one of the things I love about Fire Hall. It's a bit of a throwback that way, isn't it? It reminds us of all of those delicious treats we enjoyed as kids.
It is. And, you know, with C, if I may call you that, we also cater to various dietary restrictions. And what we like is for you to be able to come in with your parents, your grandparents, your little ones, your friends and family, and everybody be able to have something so that nobody is left out in the experience. Just a really welcoming place to be. That's the idea behind Old Fire Hall.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. See, you mentioned that CE Food Experience, going back to your roots on Moore Avenue, is 2015, so about 10 years now. When you look back over those 10 years...
Your brain hurts.
What was it like in the beginning compared to where you are at today?
So just a little bit of a jump back into the past. And so initially when I started, I had opened up a shop actually on Victoria and Park Street. I was in the back of a warehouse. I had about 400 square feet that I turned into a little kitchen. And I was lucky or savvy enough to look around and find a robotics company that I paired up with. And I did catering 5 days a week at that robotics company. And I was only at that first location for about 8 months or so. And then I upsized into 1,600 square feet, which is a Moore Street location. And that location was too big just to do kind of private catering. And so I opened up a bakery in that front side, continued the catering. And then after 7.5 years at that location, and looking for like 3 years while I was there, we finally were able to find a new location, which is our 100 Regina Street, and upsize into our, 2,500 square foot location that we're at now, and build out and kind of make it the proper size and layout and set up that a lot of people now know and see.
Could you ever have imagined at that original 400 square foot location that you would be operating a 2,500 square foot experience today?
No, not at all. It definitely has been a progression, and I'm very much a creature of, I just adapt and I pivot and I adjust. And I think COVID obviously threw a loop for everybody, and we kind of did what we had to do. And I'd been looking for quite a while, and the location kind of just lined up, and we're on the same spur line trail that we had always been on, just about 800 meters down, but it has been a whirlwind, that's for sure.
I hadn't thought of that right there on the spur line.
Yeah.
So cool, because spur line users, they're a loyal bunch.
They are, my goodness. They are walkers, talkers, bikers, commuters, everything.
They are. Yeah. Cecilia Johnston and Natasha Usher in studio with us this morning. Cecilia is the owner at C Bakery on Regina Street in Uptown Waterloo. Natasha with Fire Hall Confectionery. You're Willis Way.
35 King.
35 King. Near to the corner of? I'm trying to... the old Fire Hall building. That's where we're at. That's right.
Poppy's Bagels. Yeah.
Poppy's Bagels. There you have it. Sharing stories of business success, challenges overcome, and we continue the conversation on the Mike Farwell Show this morning, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. In studio this morning with Natasha Usher, who's the owner at Fire Hall Confectionery in Uptown Waterloo, and Cecilia Johnston, who owns C Bakery, the CE Food Experience, also in Uptown. Natasha, as you built, along with your partner Kim, Fire Hall Confectionery, what challenges did you face early on?
Oh boy, what challenges didn't we face? And that's a shorter list. I mean, let's just start with access to capital, access to qualified staff. We were just talking about that. You want to look at every aspect of the business, and I'll tell you from the get-go, it was a challenge. And I think we were talking earlier about how you just have to have a solution-oriented mentality, because if you think that it's going to come easy, there's no way on God's green earth that's ever going to happen. So you have to have a mindset where you look at every situation with a solution, with an openness to finding a solution, because the challenges they abound. There are so many of them.
A fascinating conversation organically broke out here in the studio during that commercial break, because I'm sitting here with two Black women who are running successful businesses literally blocks apart in the uptown of the same community. Natasha, I'll start with you. What does that tell you? And what particular challenges, perhaps as a Black woman, did you face starting up a business?
I mean, let's talk about the not so nice parts of it. Kimberly and I, Kimberly is not Black, and she is my business partner and best friend, and we actually think we were in the same womb. We're not quite sure how that works, but it does. But in the beginning, and actually until very recently, I would be emailing vendors and emailing suppliers, and they wouldn't be getting back to me. And I was so confused. You know, I'm calling, I'm emailing, but they would respond to Kimberly, and she wasn't the person that sent the email. And, you know, we would joke about it, because what on earth is going on at that office or, you know, that receiving desk that they're getting this mixed up. And it wasn't until we actually had a staff member that pulled me aside and said, Natasha, I have to tell you, because I see you continuously banging your head up against a wall. This is what they've told me. They refuse to take orders from a Black woman. And I was so shocked, because I look at the age of where we're at, 2024, 2025, when this was occurring. I didn't think this was a thing to that degree. Perhaps I'm just extremely naive. I would say really busy, head down, running my business, not having that same perspective myself. So to have somebody tell me, one of my staff members, and she was ever so embarrassed. I'm so thankful for that. It makes a lot of sense why they were not responding to me. But that's just one of the many challenges that we face. And I think they call it microaggression.
Oh, it's
and you
hot
just,
and heavy.
Yeah. You just
People
don't think
are
it's
constant with
a
it.
thing in 2025.
Yep.
I'm astounded that it is.
It's wild. It's constant.
Yeah.
It's absolutely constant. The amount of times I've had to physically and verbally argue with somebody that I own the business because they don't want to believe that I own it. I have my little Bitmoji picture up in the back hallway that says business owner, operator, and baker. And then I have all the other little staff pictures and names. And I have it there because the amount of times throughout my 10 and a half years of business ownership that I get into these odd arguments with people about me owning the business. And they're willing to point to anybody else in the room other than me. And it's baffling. And I don't know why it's so unbelievable, but I have to fight tooth and nail to prove that, yes, I own this, and yes, it's truly me, and no, I'm not backed by a whole bunch of other random people and, just the face of it. I'm there day in, day out, working hard, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., whatever it is, for however long I need to be there to keep my business up and going. And it's bizarre and odd that the conversation is continuous. And, yeah, it's peculiar to say the least.
Kimberly's husband has been in store with us on a number of occasions, and he's a fabulous support for us. I mean, he's wonderful. He gets voluntold to do a lot, take out the garbage, fix equipment, that sort of thing. And he will attest to the fact that he very often has to say, this is not my business.
Yes.
I am just here to wash the dishes,
Yes.
mop the floor, clean the equipment.
Yes.
If you want the owners, speak to those two ladies. And then 9 times out of 10, they'll go to Kimberly before they'll come to me.
Yep.
We do have a 50-50 partnership, and I've heard people say, are you sure?
Yes.
Are you sure that
Isn't it wild?
that she has the capability to partner with you? And without knowing my background
Yep.
or my expertise
Yep.
or lack thereof. They have no idea. Correct?
Yep.
They're making these
same
gross
thing.
assumptions.
My husband's been pointed at, being like, "Oh, you must pay her well. She's doing super great." And he's like, "I'm just standing here, just breathing her air. Like
She's my
I'm here to
sugar mama
support."
is what's going on there, right?
He's like,
Literally
she's
with
literally
bakery.
my sugar mama. Like she's taking care of all the sweet things. But yeah, it's bizarre, right? I've got my staff, all of them at this point are Caucasian, and even in the past when I've had non-Caucasian members of staff, people just assume that it's them, not me. And I'm there busting my butt, like running 10,000 things, going, and people, they want to point to anybody but me. And then when they say, "Oh, like this is a great business," and I say thank you, they go, "Oh, what do you mean?" Like, well, this is mine. Like, I started it. It's always been me. Like seafood experience. I am the sea to the food. Like, hello, thank you for coming. But people, they struggle with it. There's a very big disconnect, and people are shocked when I conduct interviews or have meetings or phone calls. They're shocked when they meet me in person or when they see, my little icon for my email. Like they don't believe that I'm capable or that, I'm telling the truth with the ownership of the business. It's bizarre.
So in light of those challenges, which are unique to the two of you, because we're not just talking about entrepreneurs and the hurdles that are overcome, what keeps you going, See?
Caffeine, sugar, ADHD, and pure naive optimism.
I like that last one.
All of those
I like
things.
that last
I
one.
push them together, push the feelings down sometimes, see a great therapist regularly. And I like what I do. I like being creative. I always joke I'm either too stubborn or too creative to work for someone else, and I'm sure I will one day, maybe at some point in life. But I like what I do. I think we're gearing heavily towards cakes and cupcakes, and really trying to hone in more on that, because that's the way that business has really taken the turn for us in the best of ways. But I like doing what I'm doing, and I love food, and I like just going and playing and having fun, and I've got a great team to support me in that vision.
Natasha, what about you? What keeps you moving forward?
Oh, my goodness. I think partially denial.
Yes.
Like every other entrepreneur. But I think honestly, our touchstone moments have been when we get to choose where our dollars and our time in store is spent. So we contribute to a fair amount of charities, and we like small charities where every dollar is important. We have not, waved the flag or tooted our own horn. We wanted it to be about the charity, not about what we were doing. But there's a school in Brampton, and it's not in any of our catchment areas of our stores. We just heard about this school of the kids that they were the most desperate of the most desperate, if that is such a thing. And Kimberly and I go and we have a class for them once a month, little cupcake decorating classes. What they are most fascinated by, the young girls in the class, is that somebody that looks like them
Yes.
can have a dream, can execute. They are so blown away. And they love to ask lifestyle questions, as well as, how do I pipe my cupcake? So I think that's really what keeps Kim and I going, is who's going to be there for those kids? Who's going to show those girls that they can do it? And those girls, those little black and brown girls,
Yes.
who's going to show them?
Yes.
So we just keep showing up.
If you can see it,
love
you can
it.
be it.
Yeah.
I had no idea about that. I love it. We're very similar, and by we I mean I. Same thing. There's 3 different schools that I go to each year, and it's just a volunteer thing. But I run basically just a seminar, and it's just Q&A, and it's they ask us about like, what have you been doing, like how did you get here, and seeing all of these kids where they're not used to seeing representation.
They're not.
And they're not used to seeing the representation in a positive light that's not gimmicky or that's not capitalizing just on, us being Black or just on us being female. Like, they don't get to see real life people who have kids, who have dogs, who have, a mortgage, or who have, the grass that's growing way too tall that they need to mow. Like, they're not used to seeing real life people, and to just sit down and talk to these kids at these 3 schools every year. And it's generally the young females. Like, I get a lot too from the young males as well, but specifically the young females who you can see that they don't have that figure in their life or that role model that they can actually reach out to and connect to. And I always end up leaving my personal number, and the amount of people who have reached out, like the amount of young kids who have reached out year after year. And I've always said, like, if you need anything, you send me a message, you give me a call, let me know what school you're from, and let me know your name. And if I don't pick up, I'll get back to you. But like, if you need something, like, I'm here as a support, because I didn't have those role models. And to hear of your stories as well too, and the support that you give I love it, right? Like, it's what helps kind of keep us grounded and connected and keeps us going when we're like, why are we doing it?
It's an amazing
you
story.
Don't have problems. Yeah. When you go to those schools, your problems are not problems.
Bingo.
It's we know the businesses. It's so great to meet the impressive women behind them. Thank you both for being here this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Cecilia Johnston, Sea Bakery on Regina in Uptown Waterloo. Natasha Usher, Fire Hall Confectionery on King Street in Uptown Waterloo. The Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. A look at the lighter side of life with living retired is coming up on the Mike Farwell Show every Thursday morning at 10:30. 570 News Radio, Rogers TV.
Hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah. I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl, you just don't realize what you do to me. When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's alright.
Every Thursday morning at this time, Gary Chalk makes time for us because what the heck else has he got but time? He's retired. Living Retired is Gary's humor column, and he brings it to life on our show each and every Thursday morning. We were talking, Gary, about you and your lovely wife, Jan, retiring. The bucket list conversation started. What's on yours?
Well, first of all, there's a negotiation.
Well, it's Thursday morning, and that means we get a break. Not that kind of break the old chocolate bar commercial used to tell you that you get. We get a break from heavy stuff and enjoy a little bit of laughter with our good friend Gary Chalk. Gary writes the humor column Living Retired, and he brings it to our show every Thursday morning at 10:30. If you want to find the column, by the way, and I highly recommend this, go to livingretired.press. And while you're there, you can sign up and have it delivered right into your inbox. So every week, you get a chuckle along with all those dumb memos from the boss. Mr. Chalk, a very good Thursday morning, sir.
And a good morning to you, Mike, with a mic. How are you?
I am doing just fine, thank you. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Well, we're into March.
Oh,
that's good. Right?
Good.
Actually, it's great. The winter, it's what? It's in our rearview mirror, and now we can look forward to mosquito season.
Listen,
right?
I promise, Gary, my solemn vow to you, I will not complain about a single mosquito. I won't complain about a single high humidity day. I'm all in for the nice weather to come.
I am too, and actually, when the nice weather comes, first thing I'm going to do is trudge through the snow to the front window and dislodge the shovel, which is where it ended up when I threw it.
Right where it belongs.
Right
where it belongs. You betcha.
Oh dear. Well, I was thinking. Lots of people are looking forward to retirement, and I'm not an expert at it, but I did retire, 14 years ago, and they always kept saying, you'll know when it's time to retire. And Jan and I were talking, my wife, we were talking about that the other day, that when she retired, she just knew it. So I jotted down, here's 3 or 4 of these, Mike. You know it's time to retire when your boss walks into your office and you don't even bother trying to get off the solitaire game you're playing on your computer screen. It's time to retire when that occurs. Or how about this one? Your boss walks into your office, you're playing duck, duck, goose, and you invite him to join in. Right? Or here's the last one. Now this is really noticeable. If your boss walks into your cubicle and you're playing take this job and shove it, you might as well just pack up your stuff and head out of town right then and there.
I like the way you think, Gary. I can get behind all of these ideas, I think.
But, then the other thing is, now you got to tell your boss that you're going to retire. If you're going to your boss's office and you're going to tell him or her that you're retired, which you got to take some tact and some sincerity. So just be sure when you're leaving, you don't start jumping and screaming and running as if your in-laws had just pulled out of the driveway after their visit.
It's like that last day of school when you're a kid and you finally get out of there. No more teachers, no more books, all that stuff.
That's right. The other thing you got to do, you got to put some thought to this. You got to change your voicemail message for your last 2 weeks of your job. So I thought about mine. How did you think this one went? I said, "Hi, you've reached Gary Chalk. Please leave me a message. But don't expect to hear back from me because I'm retiring and I don't give a crap anymore. Did you hear me? I don't care."
I think it's perfect. I mean, honesty is the best policy, Gary.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. Then you're going to have to clean up your computer and doing some of those things. It's all covered in the employee handbook. 3 of the important tasks are, 1, as we say, erase all the evidence on your computer that shows you spent half of every working day for the past 3 years on the Rogers Sportsnet app. It's just best to delete all that stuff, right? And the other thing, ensure that after you've retired, your name continues to be included in the department's weekly lottery picks. That's the most significant. You know darn well, Mike. You've been putting money in every week. You know it. As soon as you leave, the department's going to win and you're no longer there. You got to make sure your name and your money is still in that pool.
You got to fund your retirement somehow.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have to call your staff together. And you got to tell them very politely that you told your boss what he could do with your job. And then you sort of have to say something to them, leave them on a high, and wish them well, and hope that they hang around long enough for a good buyout. That's sort of a nice way to put it to them.
Absolutely. You wish your best for your soon-to-be former coworkers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Then you got to prepare for life after work. And the best part of this is I found I didn't have to make any more important decisions. That felt good. That was a big relief. So, things like, who gets their coffee first and who gets to plant their face in the photocopy machine for the department Christmas card. It's all that type of stuff. You don't have to make those very important decisions that seem to affect others. That's a good thing. And then now you're finally retired and you're at home. This is great. Now you can, I'm sitting here in my pajamas and my slippers are duct taped together, and I just sort of walk around eating peanut butter from the jar, gulping milk from a jug, and that's my day.
You know what? I can get behind it, Gary. It sounds pretty damn good to me.
Well, and here's the other thing when you leave corporate life behind. I don't know about you, but maybe it says more about me, really. I had it with the mission, visions, and values. Oh, my goodness. My mission now is to drink as much coffee as I can. And my values in retirement, they can be as pathetic as you want them to be. If you like to spend time on swearing at all the telemarketers that call you with duct cleaning offers, that's fine. That's my value. My value is to insult all those telemarketers.
and that's a value that extends beyond the Chalk household. You're helping others when you make it difficult for those telemarketers.
Exactly. Yeah. You're helping your fellow man, and that's good to do. Oh, my goodness. And like I said, you can sleep whatever you want, wherever you want, stay in your pajamas all day. And, of course, in all this selfish laziness, you can complain about the low level of the worker output in Canada.
Of course you can.
You've earned that right.
That's right. You put your time in.
You bet it. So then Jan and I, when I retired and shortly after she retired, it came down to getting around to the bucket list. You got a bucket list?
Oh, do I have a bucket list, Gary Chalk? I'll tell you what. Why don't we talk about those bucket lists here together this morning?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Hang on, Gary. Gary Chalk joins us every Thursday morning, 10:30. He writes the humor column Living Retired, and on Thursdays at 10:30, he brings it to our show. We can have a little bit of laughs, and today we're going to compare bucket lists coming up. Stay with us. It's the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every Thursday morning at this time, Gary Chalk makes time for us because what the heck else has he got but time? He's retired, living retired is Gary's humor column, and he brings it to life on our show each and every Thursday morning. We were talking, Gary, about you and your lovely wife, Jan, retiring. The bucket list conversation started. What's on yours?
Well, first of all, there's a negotiation process. My bucket list, it differs completely from Jan's bucket list. Just so you know, that's your first challenge in retirement with your spouse, is to be able to negotiate, which is another word for get your way of your bucket list. First thing on my bucket list, at the auditorium, during periods of the hockey game, I want to drive the Zamboni.
Oh, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. I mentioned that to Jan. She said, you can't scrape the ice off the front porch. What makes you qualified to drive a Zamboni ice resurfacer? But just imagine, Mike, you're going down and you're approaching the end boards, and just the thrill of driving on ice and coming towards the end of the rink and looking up at those people who think they're going to wipe, but you're going to wipe them out. What a thrill!
I don't know if I could handle the pressure of all those people watching me drive on ice, Gary.
Well, I know. I saw that video of you last summer with the Olympic. Is that what?
Yeah, the Olympia ice resurfacing machines made right here in Elmira, and I got a chance to drive one. Not on ice, mind you. Maybe they didn't trust me enough for that.
That's true. What's on your list?
I need to get to, at some point, Gary, I'm thinking much larger than just driving the ice resurfacing machine. Yep. I need to get to Hawaii. I haven't been there yet. It is absolutely a bucket list vacation for me.
It always reminds me of the joke of the person is on the plane and he doesn't know whether it's Hawaii or Hawaii. And he asked the person, he said, excuse me, are we going to Hawaii or Hawaii? And the passenger beside said, well, we're going to Hawaii. And he said, thank you. He said, you're welcome.
I'll look for that passenger when I go. And I would also love to drive this country coast to coast. I've done it separately. From working out west, I drove back to Ontario.
Yep.
And then previously, I've gone from Ontario east. But I would like to do the whole thing. Maybe even get it, around North America a little bit more. I can picture myself in my big RV, Gary, just enjoying the open road.
Oh, I can just picture you driving that RV trying to parallel park the beast.
That's what Walmart's parking lots are for. That's the only thing I think they're for.
Oh, my gosh. I'd also like to work a member of a highway construction crew. I want to be the guy who holds that stick that's got that red stop sign that he makes cars line up for as far back as he can see. And then finally, he sets his cell phone down, and he turns the sign and allows all these fuming drivers to proceed. That's power.
That is power. That's a great idea. And, I used to think, gosh, that's one of the worst jobs out there. But then I found out that they make an okay wage for standing there in the sun all day.
Exactly. And the power is in that pole.
I always try to give them a wave. It's not their fault, I insist. It's the only way that helps me get through those long lines.
Right. Anything else in your bucket list?
I would like to spend at least one. If I'm lucky, if I can manage things well enough, more than one, but at least one winter. I want to be away where it doesn't snow. If I could make it a calendar year without ever having to see a snowflake or scrape a windshield, I think that would just be the greatest calendar year ever.
Well, boy, I'll tell you, I think I'm going to have to revise the list here. Jan! That one's looking pretty good. Here's something. I want to go to an IKEA store. I want to take my shoes off, and I want to jump into that ball pit with all the other children. Whee!
With all the other children. Listen, you're just a child at heart, Gary.
Yeah, I just want to see the reaction as the parents all come over sneering at me and yanking their kids out from underneath all those balls. That'd be fun.
I have a feeling that your bucket list might be the more attainable of the lists we've compared here, Gary. I mean, listen, I always say on the radio, you can say anything you want once.
Once.
So you can go into that IKEA store, jump in that ball pit and get the HE double hockey sticks out of there, you're golden. You can do that, yeah.
It's like marriage. You can say anything you want once.
Exactly, right? You got this figured out.
I'd also like to work at Costco. I want to be the person who, when you leave, and I can't figure this one out, but they glance at your receipt, and they got this black marker, and they make a big check mark on it.
Yes.
Like, well, what's that about?
But the question, what are the qualifications? Using a marker, making an appropriate check mark?
Yeah, maybe they're just doing a little mental math and seeing how many rolls of toilet paper are in your cart when you're walking.
Oh, you know you're being judged.
I know, exactly. Anything else in your list?
I like that idea. I've always thought of, a big box retailer. Maybe I'll go see my buddy Brad Swanson at Swanson's Home Hardware. And I could see myself doing some customer service just for the fun of it. It is fun, isn't it, Gary? It looks fun. I don't know. I'd be a nice customer.
Oh, well, good for you. Does your wife have anything on her bucket list that includes you?
No. I was going to say, me being out of her hair. That is the only thing she wants. She is so worried about my pending retirement. If it ever gets
the house, what are we going to do?
Exactly. She says, you better stay busy because I can't handle this 24 hours a day.
Well, Jan, I asked her, and she said once and for all, she wants to be able to pick clothes out from her dresser without them coming out in a crumpled ball because I didn't add fabric softener.
You just reminded me of one of my other simple things. I'm very lucky. Our good friends at Channer's Menswear in Uptown Waterloo make sure that for the TV audience, I am dressed appropriately. But when the time comes that I don't have to come in anymore, I'm thinking jeans and a white T-shirt every day. Like that will be my retired wear.
Yep. No, that works for me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And then just one other thing Jan had, she said she wanted to make sure that she could make her bed, as she said, once, so it doesn't look like it was thrown together by Oscar on The Odd Couple, because I make the bed. Well, I sort of throw the stuff on the bed. She just doesn't think it looks very good.
Gary, you've given us so much to look forward to. We're even more excited for retirement. Thanks as always.
Hey, have a good one, Mike. Go Rangers.
Gary Chalk joins us every Thursday morning at this time to bring his humor column, Living Retired, to our show. I encourage you to visit livingretired.press. Find the column for yourself. Sign up for the weekly newsletter. It'll pop right into your inbox, and you'll get a chuckle each and every week, along with Gary's appearance here on the show. It's the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Kitchener,
a Rogers radio station.
number one for breaking news, traffic, and weather. 570 News.
Just reflecting kind of off the cuff on that most recent commercial that just finished from a federal conservative candidate in our community. And there hasn't even been an election called yet. But here's the thing. Federally, of course, our parliament is prorogued until March the 24th, at which time we'll get back to the business in Ottawa. But for how long will the current Liberal government survive under its new leader, whoever that should be, likely Mark Carney? But there are some signals that we need to, drag this out a little bit further with the status quo in our federal parliament to ensure that we can adequately prepare for, match, respond to U.S. tariffs. What if the next federal election doesn't happen until the fall? Just put it out there for you to think about as we continue on with our show this morning. And as we do that, I am looking so forward to the next conversation. This has been an idea in the making for quite some time, and I finally got off my derriere and decided to do something about it. And I was so pleased to have such an enthusiastic and willing participant in the City of Waterloo Museum. It is Thursday, and we are going to implement a regular Throwback Thursday segment here on the show, remembering different parts of our community's unique history. I know that you've got a love for this community, as do I, and we'll share that love together with Throwback Thursdays here on the program, the first episode of which is next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I am so excited that we are finally debuting this feature. Throwback Thursdays has been a thing since I don't know when online, and I always had the idea that we should do something like this on the show. And to be honest with you, for the most part, it was just me not getting around to doing the thing that I should be doing, which is actually taking some initiative and talking to some folks in the community to say, hey, what do you think of this idea? And I was so happy that the City of Waterloo Museum was so enthusiastic about jumping on board with this. And so we bring you the debut of Throwback Thursdays here on the program. It will officially happen on the first Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. I hope to make it a weekly thing. I'm getting there. My derriere gets bigger and bigger by the week, and so the quicker I can move, the quicker we'll add more to it. But Jennifer Huber sits across from me, the Program and Engagement Associate at the City of Waterloo Museum. Jen, good morning.
Hey, Mike. And thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be here for Throwbacks Thursday with the City of Waterloo Museum, where we'll take a step back in time to uncover fascinating stories of our city's past.
I love to hear it. So can we start by talking about the City of Waterloo Museum's past? How did this all come to be?
Yeah, so I actually love that we're starting with that because I do think it's important that we introduce your listeners to who we are, because some folks maybe aren't so familiar with us. But we have some really unique features to who we are. And one of the things I wanted to start with is where we are, because our location is rather unique. So you can find museums in so many different places. Think of some that you've been to before. What kind of buildings have you visited for museums?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of my favorites are in Ottawa, if I may be so elitist as to suggest. But usually the museums I have visited are standalone buildings where you walk in and experience modern civilization or the War Museum, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can find them in historic buildings too, like houses, old town halls, post offices, train stations. Like you can find them as individual buildings, as part of like larger villages and so forth. But we are really unique in that we're located inside Conestoga Mall. That's right. I'm talking about a shopping mall at the north end of Waterloo. And you can visit through two entrances. So we do have one that comes from the parking lot. You can park between the Galaxy Cinemas, the Bay, and come on in. It's a little white museum sign. Or you can enter through the food court, which I don't think every museum gets to say, just off of the food court.
And by the way, that's where I like to enter from because I tend to find myself and my derriere in the food court more often than not.
Excellent. So when you visit a museum, what are some of the things you like to see at a museum?
Oh my gosh. I like to see artifacts, photographs, obviously, or pictures, paintings that tell about the past. And one of my favorite parts, Jen, about being in a museum is reading. Whatever the panels or placards have on display, I like to read that and soak in as much information as I can.
I love that. You know what? That leads us to having so many great conversations as our series continues on because I have so many fabulous pictures and artifacts and things to share. And we like to display a lot of those pieces at the museum as well. So we aim to change our exhibits about twice a year, always focusing on what's unique about the City of Waterloo. Now, Waterloo has so much to offer, and we want to connect it into that national and international picture, if you will. So that impact and that footprint that we leave behind. If you visit us right now, our exhibit is Indigenous Stories. So until April 11th, we are hosting the Legacy of Hope Foundation's exhibit looking at the history and impact of residential schools. And then we will be switching to looking at Baiwagen, which is firsthand accounts of survivors from the 60s scoop. So they were children that were taken away from their families, placed into foster care or child services, and no longer able to kind of be part of their culture and participate that way. So difficult but vital stories. But we've done so many different topics in addition to those. We've done history, straight history, we've done geography, science, art. Really, Waterloo has a little bit of everything to offer. So what are some stories that make you think of Waterloo?
Oh my gosh, stories that make me think of Waterloo. I think mostly it comes from the business community that helped to build Waterloo. So I always think of Ira Needles, for example. I think of Seagram's as another example. And Waterloo, really, I'm old enough, Jen, to have been around when we called this place Waterloo County. Okay, before it was a region of Waterloo. But even though I was born and raised and still live in Kitchener, I've always considered the community as being Waterloo. In fact, if I can go on a little bit more of a tangent, one of my favorite, my absolute favorite, and every once in a while I get an email, so I think he listens to the show or reads some of the stuff that I write, Dr. Ken McLaughlin from the University of Waterloo, and he taught a course on the history of Ontario. And I took it while I was at UW, and it opened my eyes. It was only then, if you can believe it. So I'm a post-secondary student in my early 20s. And only then did I connect all of the place names and street names in this community to the people who lived here and helped build it. Bit of a tangent. But for me, it's always been, even as a Kitchenerite, Waterloo. That's where we live. So that's kind of a long-winded and roundabout answer, but I think of the businesses, I think of the people, and I think of Waterloo itself as being central to this community.
You are so absolutely right. And we've done exhibits on the Seagrams, whether it's the whiskey, which everyone's very familiar with.
Really?
Just maybe a
Did they make
too.
whiskey? Is that what? Okay, sure. I'll go with that.
Whether it's connected to their legacy of horse racing or just the family's general impact in our community. We've done tech sector, looking at, the modern day history of Waterloo, if you will, more recent kind of stuff that has happened. We've looked at our textile industry, things that were produced here, not something that's often talked about, always in association with Waterloo, but we had a very vibrant area here. The city's growth, blackberries, research in motion. So there's just really so much that we can really explore in our city's history. And I'm hoping that together we'll get to dive into a bunch of that.
I look forward to that. Jennifer Huber is in studio with us, the Program and Engagement Associate at the City of Waterloo Museum. We're laying the groundwork for Throwback Thursdays, first Thursday of every month at 11 here on the show. We'll continue the conversation with Jennifer Huber right after this on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Really pleased to be joined in studio this morning by Jennifer Huber, who is the Program and Engagement Associate at the City of Waterloo Museum. Had this idea for Throwback Thursdays here on the show. And when I finally got the idea in motion, I reached out to several places in our community that collect our history, showcase our history, and the City of Waterloo Museum was one of the first and very enthusiastically jumped on board with this. So it's great to have Jen in studio this morning talking more about what the City of Waterloo Museum has to offer. And we've had such a great conversation already about the people who built here, where you are in Conestoga Mall, and so much more.
And some of the exhibits we had. So we were talking about Seagram's, tech sector, the city's growth, all those different things. Now, coming into a museum, how much would you expect to pay to visit us?
Oh my gosh.
All these great topics.
I would expect somewhere between $15 and $20 for an entry fee.
Well, believe it or not, it's fully free.
Come on.
Completely.
F-R-E-E free, one of my favorite words.
Not everything in life is free, but we are. And really what that was about is we wanted it to be barrier free. We wanted to be here to serve our community and make sure that they had access to us, that they could come as they wanted to and not have to worry about anything like that. It's wheelchair accessible, walker accessible. We have sensory friendly hours for sensitive visitors, and you can find more about that on our website if any of that applies to you. But really our goal was to be a museum for our community with the community.
That's fantastic. So no admission charge to get in the door.
Nope.
Love
Small donation box if folks want to give something, but no need, absolutely.
Great stuff.
Now, maybe some of the folks haven't heard of who we are. I've kind of covered where we are, what are some of the things you might find there, but where did we come from is probably a question folks have. Now, we have been in Conestoga Mall since 2009, so we've spent 15 years there, and some of those topics I mentioned earlier are some of the exhibits that we've hosted throughout that time. But before that, we were having our collection in the top floor of the Canadian Clay and Glass Museum in Uptown Waterloo. And then before that, you might wonder, because we didn't really exist. Or I guess we didn't exist as the City of Waterloo Museum.
Interesting.
Now, hold on to that thought for 1 minute, because I want you to think back and see if you remember maybe this little museum called the Seagram's Museum in Uptown Waterloo.
Oh my gosh, of course. Yes, yes.
Had you ever been there before?
I had not been in before, but I absolutely remember it.
You remember it. Perfect. Well, it's kind of, I'm getting some of your listeners have been there before because it was around in our community for a little while, but it was really the brainchild of Charles Bronfman in the early 1980s. And he was one of the later owners of the Seagrams. He's actually the co-chairman of the Seagrams in Canada around that time. And he had this idea that he wanted to bring together a museum that celebrated the history and science of wines and spirits. He might also want to tie in a little bit of his family's history with the distillery industry as well, but, works both ways.
Sure.
So after a lot of work in the early 80s, in 1984, he opened up at the corner of Herb and Caroline Street a state-of-the-art facility. It had stunning artifacts, intriguing exhibits, and towering wooden racks that were full of aging whiskey barrels. Now, it was a huge success when it opened. It saw somewhere around 700 visitors each day.
Incredible.
And it was fueled because it was right next to the Seagram's distillery, right? So you have kind of it feeding itself back and forth. Now, after 13 years, the museum, or as it was nicknamed by many community members, the Boozeseum.
I love it.
I thought that was a pretty good one, too, when I came across it. It actually closed in 1997. And it closes for a couple different reasons. The distillery had closed about 5 years earlier in 1992, and it closed for a variety of reasons. They weren't, taxes were higher, not as much production being done, and what they saw at the museum is the attendance was starting to drop off and wane. The Seagram's dynasty, with all their brands and goods and products, was making a move, and they were no longer going to keep their Waterloo plant, and as a result, the museum kind of fell by the wayside as well. So the city decided to purchase the property, and the collection that the museum hosted was actually dispersed, so it was sent to a variety of different places. Now, there were about 6,000 different items that were deemed uniquely Waterloo. They told things about the workers who were in the distillery in Waterloo. They talked about the family, the original Seagrams, Joseph E. Seagram with his sons who had built the distillery and had really kind of honed that craft and really grew in our community. It had things about local industries that were connected to the distillery. So things like coopering, and you might remember Canada Barrels and Kegs, for example.
Absolutely.
Comes out of that. So the city decided that they would keep and hold on to those items. And after that, they worked on eventually figuring out they had a collection now and what were they going to do with it. And boom, that is what birthed the City of Waterloo Museum.
Now, did you have to go back out and sort of reclaim all of those 6,000 items that had been dispersed, or?
They had even more.
Wow.
If you can imagine, they had quite a large collection, and they sent them off into different museums in different locations, and what was left was the 6,000 that came to us.
Gotcha.
So that's what was the basis of our collection. And since then, we've added to it. We've continued stories about the manufacturing industry or things that were made here in Waterloo, and collecting things that are connected to our city's growth over time as well. So we have quite a nice collection now.
Amazing. Sure. Absolutely amazing. I get the sense, Jen, that it would be very difficult for you to travel anywhere in this community without seeing it through some historic lens, like what it used to be or what used to be there or the story of that particular place.
Have you talked to my family and how I annoy them
no,
with
I
all
haven't.
These fun facts? Like, oh, did you know right here this was what da-da-da-da? Yes, I do actually have a love of sharing those things. And we actually do different walking tours as a result of that. So I find it so fascinating to kind of take the items you see in the museum and in the collection and then apply them to what's around us outside when we're walking through town or driving by and just really remembering where things came to be. I know we were talking about street names even earlier. It's
Sure.
so fascinating just to see where some of those things came from and why they're part of our community.
I think we've got the perfect match here to continue this, and you've got us in your calendar on the first Thursday of every month moving forward.
I sure do.
I love it. I love it. Jen, thanks so much for being here and sharing this with us today.
Thank you so much for having us, the City of Waterloo Museum. People can come visit us at Conestoga Mall. You can explore our exhibits online if you would like. But until next time, keep the past alive.
Keep the past alive. That's what we're going to keep doing with Throwback Thursdays here on the show. Jennifer Huber is a program and engagement associate with the City of Waterloo Museum. First Thursday of every month, 11 a.m. for Throwback Thursdays here on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Thursday mornings, 11 a.m., are going to become Throwback Thursdays here on the program. The first Thursday of the month for sure, thanks to the enthusiastic participation of the City of Waterloo Museum. I would love to get the Ken Sealing Museum on Homer Watson involved in this as well, the Grace Schmidt Room at the Kitchener Public Library, so continuing to work on that. But certainly at minimum, on the first Thursday of every month, we'll have a little Throwback Thursday here and celebrate some of our community's history. I know that when we come back a month from now with the City of Waterloo Museum, we'll talk about that expressway that we all enjoy so much. And we really do. How many times have we talked about the vision that was behind the construction of our expressway that other communities wish they had? Hello, London. I'm talking to you because traffic there is such a nightmare. They wish they had an expressway like ours to help move that traffic around. And as you probably know, the expressway as we know it, as much as we appreciate and enjoy the vision of it from way back in the 1950s and then built in the 60s, I think it opened early 60s, right? Anyway, was originally intended on being a ring road that was never actually completed. So these are the sorts of things we'll talk about on our Throwback Thursdays here, first Thursday of every month at 11. And while we're on that note, a throwback to a business leader in our community who we sadly lost to cancer in the last 24 hours, Mike Williamson, the co-owner at Central Fresh in Kitchener. The store and Mike's family continues to run it the same way he always has and with the passion for the community that he brought. But we certainly join the family in mourning the loss of the patriarch, Mike Williamson, and send our sincere condolences, to be sure. An update from the 570 News Center is on the way. And then this being Thursday, we have some fun on the Flipside. We're going to keep that kind of throwback, nostalgic feel to it because I've been watching this show on Netflix and I'm getting all of the feels. And it just reminds me of the movie that this show has sprung from. Takes me back to being a kid. What movie or TV show from when you were a kid do you want to go back and just watch again and again and again? Or maybe you do. That's the Flipside question for you as we continue on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, it was unintentional, but I think it works. Unintentional in that we just came off from the debut of our Throwback Thursdays segment here on the show, which I'm really excited to be doing on a regular basis. And my Flipside question for today also, I think, takes us back a little bit on the nostalgic side, but I'll let you in on my viewing habits of late. It's been an interesting / kind of slower week, which I've been enjoying without much to do in the after hours from work. So I've been settling in and picking up some Netflix shows. Well, one Netflix show and then one show that shows up on TV in the afternoon that for some reason I've found irresistible lately. But because I've had the time and I've been taking them in, I thought, I bet you I'm not the only one who has these nostalgic feelings for old movies or old shows. And when I watch them, they take me back to the time that I first saw them and what that time was like. And so if I'm not the only one, surely you would have an answer to the question. What TV show or movie is it that you could go back to as a kid and just watch again and again and again? Maybe you did watch it over and over and over again as a kid. Maybe you've continued watching it into your adulthood, be it that movie that you loved so much or that throwback TV show. 519-570-2545, star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. For me, and this occurred to me last evening as I sat down to continue watching Cobra Kai. I know, might as well just layer on the fromage, right? Because it is so cheesy. The follow-up, the Netflix TV series, which picks up the Karate Kid movie from back in 1984 and picks up Daniel LaRusso and Johnny as adults. And when the show started, I couldn't get enough of it. I'm like, this is great. And then it dragged into a third season, and I think, are we on season 4, 5, 6 now? Anyway, and I felt like it was starting to drag a little bit, and I was kind of, sort of, with this season, I waited to get to it, because I'm like, I don't know, like season 5, it just seemed like this show wasn't meant for me. It was too far away from Daniel and Johnny, and anyway, after watching last night, it's getting close to its end, and maybe that's why I'm feeling all the nostalgic feels, but it's hitting all the right notes for me. It really is. And now I'm thinking back on when I first saw The Karate Kid, how much I loved that movie, and this Cobra Kai show is doing it for me on every level. So the movie at this point would be Karate Kid. I could tell you I saw it at the old Cineplex Sixplex in the basement of, I think, what's now the Eaton's condominiums downtown Kitchener, right? Anyway, the little Sixplex, the itty-bitty theaters that we would go into, and there were 6 of them down there. I remember seeing The Karate Kid in that theater when I was a kid, and wax on, wax off. And the other show that I have found on in the afternoons on CHTV at 4 o'clock, Knight Rider. It's so terrible. Like, it is so bad. As a kid, I loved it. But I can't stop watching it now. And so if I'm home and Rosie and I have been out for our walk, then I'll flip it on and watch David Hasselhoff drive around an indestructible car. And the whole thing is just so bad, but yet it's so good. And it takes me back, and I can watch it again and again and again, even though I'm now a man of a certain age and probably have better things to do with my time. So what is it for you? That the movie or the TV show that you can watch again and again and again reminds you of being a kid? Let's go to the phones and hear from you on the flip side. George, good morning.
Good morning. Mike, like you, there's many shows I enjoyed watching as a kid, many. But the one I really like now, every time I see it, I sit down. I don't make any excuses. I sit down and watch it, is Get Smart. That was such a great, intelligent, funny show. I can watch the whole season in one sitting. So for me, it's Get Smart.
Get Smart. Like, you're not talking the remake movie. You're going back to the original days.
Oh, yeah, the 60s and 70s. That's the one.
I love it, George. Well done, sir. Agent 99 and the rest. Get Smart is the one that does it for George. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. I still love you, Mike.
Oh, buddy, I still love you, too.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So when I was a kid, Mike, Batman and Robin.
That's such a good one, Mark. Yes, I loved watching it because the kapows and the kabangs that showed up on the TV screen.
It was so fun to watch as a youngster. And then they continued it on to the next day. And you never know how Batman could get out of that situation.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Exactly, Mike. So that's mine for you, Mike.
Good one, Mark. I really like it. I can't remember if it was the movie or, because remember they did and we're talking Adam West and Burt Ward. Like this is way back Batman stuff, and it was so cheesy. And they did a movie too, like a TV movie. And I remember Batman being on a rope ladder hanging down from a helicopter over water, and a shark is jumping out of the water to get at Batman on the rope ladder, and he, of course, uses his utility belt, because what has he got in there is shark repellent. He sprays the shark repellent on because only on 60s TV, right? That's a good one. And if you're wondering why Mark says he still loves me, it's because earlier this week he said this.
Mike, you suck.
Sometimes I suck, and I deserve to be told when I suck. And Mark that's because he loves me, that he was willing to say, Mike, you suck. Now, on the other hand, one of our other regulars, Paul.
It's the reasons that Mike Farwell is stupid.
I don't know what I did to deserve that, but I guess sometimes I'm stupid too. Continuing the flip side, Christine, what TV show or movie takes you back to being a kid you could watch again and again and again?
I have 2 shows.
Okay.
One is The Littlest Hobo.
Oh my gosh, so good, so good.
And the other one is Little House on the Prairie.
Oh, that's, you know what? I got so much time for Pa Ingalls on that one. Michael Landon. Terrific. Yep. What was, I'm trying to remember, Christine, the Littlest Hobo's name. I should know this, like his real name.
I can't remember his real name either, but he was a beautiful dog.
Oh, my goodness. So true, Christine. So true. Until tomorrow. Yep. Traveling around helping people. What a good dog. Nathan, good morning.
Good morning, sir. We're the same vintage, so we probably ran home from school to watch a lot of the same cartoons and stuff. Like G.I. Joe and Transformers and all that jazz. But when I was in my early 20s, the party kind of days, do you remember CKVR out of Barrie?
Sure, of course.
So every Sunday they would play.
I'm pretty sure it was VR, though, wasn't it? CKVR. Anyway.
CKVR, yeah.
Yeah.
And they'd play Little Rascals, Our Gang, and Three Stooges every Sunday morning until like 1 in the afternoon. It was the perfect hangover, too. And yes, I am quite caught up on the Cobra Kai myself. This season's kind of not doing it so much for me, but we'll see how it ends.
Really? So you're in season 6 too, and it's not doing it for you?
I think it's season 5.2 or something like that. Yeah, they did some weird half-season thing. I don't know.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, it's been a fun ride, but it's starting to wear off a little bit.
I get it, Nate. Appreciate the call. That's what it was for me, certainly after season 5. And see, I'm also I'm so weird this way. But if I start it, I'm going to finish what I started, right? And to be honest with you, season 5 of Cobra Kai and season 4 and maybe even season 3, I liked it initially because Johnny and Daniel was, I think, still trying to figure out their relationship as adults. And it was neat to see that again. But anyway, it went in a different direction that I didn't love. And I just was watching it for the sake of watching it. But season 6, which is, I'm pretty sure, the one I'm in now, whatever the most recent is, it's really got me hooked back up, and I'm really starting to like it again, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out for sure. And it takes me right back to those Karate Kid days. Mike, good morning.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe you mentioned Cobra Kai right away.
Why?
I just finished it. I was binging it. I loved it.
Come on, so you loved it all the way, every season?
Well, I did, but there's definitely cheesy parts where you roll your eyes and go, come on. But the part I loved about the whole series is they brought back little fillers and details from the movie that you would never know, like the history of Mr. Miyagi and what happened to him. Like all those little tiny things were kind of fun.
For sure, for sure.
I loved it. It was really good. So, yeah, Police Academy is another one I loved.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, the Cineplex was right in the corner of Water Street, I think. That's where that's where you saw it.
100%.
I snuck in to pay for a PG and then went into the restricted, show instead.
Now, Mike, why would you do such a thing? Shame on you.
Teenager, we did it. Anyway, that was fun. Good one on Cobra Kai. You'll like the ending.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that, and thanks for not spoiling the ending. Yes, and Eaton's Lofts. That's what I couldn't come up with before. That's King and Water. There's Fiddlesticks. I'm going to forget the name, though. The market that's in there now. Anyway, that was the place, the Cineplex. You went downstairs, 6 little movie theaters. And Mike's point, if you're into the Cobra Kai thing or the Karate Kid thing, yes, there have been some nuggets right down to the episode I just finished. And I don't think this is giving away too much, but we're kind of back at the scene of the All Valley Karate Championship circa 1984. And one of the characters gets injured and is in the locker room being tended to by the doctors. And it is the exact same dialogue that was in The Karate Kid after Sweep the Leg, and Daniel got knocked out of the tournament before coming back with his, famous crane move to beat Johnny Lawrence in that championship. But the same language, a mother saying to the kid, "You did awesome." And anyway, I was getting into it. I was having all the feels watching it last night. Marianne, good morning.
Good morning. I may be a strange lady, but I will say some of my favorite movies is Anne of Green Gables, Sound of Music, and Orphan at Annie. And now I was in grade 8 before we had a TV at home, so I didn't watch much TV as a young child. But when we were in school, and I watched it after we got the TV too, The Flintstones was my favorite cartoon.
Oh, that was a fun one. Now, my buddies and I used to watch that at lunchtime when we went home from school in elementary school back at St. Anne's in the day.
I went to a country school, so we didn't get to go home for lunch.
Of course.
Sometimes the teachers were nice enough and they got us a TV while we were eating our lunch and we got to watch the Flintstones.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yes, I thought the same thing.
So let me get this straight, though, Marianne. Anne of Green Gables, Little Orphan Annie. You got a thing for redheads or what?
Yeah, I think I do.
Thanks for the call, Marianne.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the rest of your day. That Flintstones and then Leave It to Beaver. Back to back, noon and 12:30. And I'm not even joking. We lived relatively close to the school, so we'd walk home for lunch, watch them both. And then when Leave It to Beaver was ending, we would book it, like book our little behinds back to school to make it for the 12:55, 1 o'clock bell, whatever it was when. But we watched as much of Leave It to Beaver as we could at 12:30. It's the flip side on your Thursday morning, and we're talking about those shows or movies from when you were a kid that just take you back. You could watch them again and again and again. We continue here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The Netflix series Cobra Kai kind of got me. It got me initially because it was following up on the lives of Daniel LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence, who famously met in the 1984 All Valley Karate Championships in the movie The Karate Kid. And I admit, over the seasons, it kind of lost me a little bit, but I stuck with it. And I'm glad I did, because I was watching again last night as season 6 begins to wind down, and it hit all the right notes for me. So it got me thinking for the flip side today. What movie was it when you were a kid that you can think back on, you watch again and again? It always takes you back to that nostalgic place. The Karate Kid, obviously, there for me. Wax on, wax off, Mr. Miyagi, Squish Like Grape, all of those other things. Or it could be a TV show, too, because CH is playing at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Knight Rider. And I got to tell you, the Hoff, David Hasselhoff, it is so much fun to look back at that. Even though the show is terrible and it looks so incredibly cheesy, I have a difficult time turning my eyes away for it. Maybe it's Hasselhoff's dazzling smile. I'm not sure. Let's go back to the phones on the flip side. Peter, good morning.
Morning. Someone already beat me to it. I was going to say Littlest Hobo as well. And dog's name is London.
Yes.
It was London.
Yes, it was. Thank you for that, Peter. Thank you.
And then for the movie, I guess when it came out, I was a kid, Titanic.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Great. Yeah, I could watch that over and over again. And there was also another one when I was a kid that came out. It was actually the first CGI TV show in history. It was called Reboot. And I love showing it to my kids now. But it's a fun fact that I was actually developed in the Waterloo Region, too. The first CGI TV show ever. So that's pretty cool.
Really? Did we develop it like out of CKCO studios or something? Or
I'm not sure, but
okay.
It was like part of that YTV network, I think. That was in Toronto.
Right.
Yeah, so thanks. That's all.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate that. Those are some great memories. And YTV wasn't Tom Knowlton somewhere on there somewhere? And of course, Tom was on CKCO TV back in the day as well. Dave, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. I have two in both original TV shows. The first one is Superman, and the second one is not politically correct today, but it was the Lone Ranger.
Why is it not politically correct?
Well, because the Kemosabe was a white man, if I remember correctly.
Oh, all right.
But
so,
that was my two originals.
Superman, I'm trying to remember, Dave. George Reeves, I want to say Reeves, but it wasn't Reeves, was it?
Well, I thought it was Chris Reeve, but I could be wrong.
Christopher Reeve was the movie Superman, for sure.
Oh, okay. Then I don't remember either.
All right. Well, Dave, thanks for that. So the Lone Ranger and Superman back. Here's the only problem with Superman. He's Superman. Like, there's no way to beat him. Kryptonite hidden in a box like Lex Luthor did in the movie. Come on. John, good morning.
Good morning to you, Mike, and good morning to my favorite talk show host, who is the fan of the team, whose name will not be mentioned in my house. But if you allow me, Mike, I would like to go with a hat trick, I guess, of TV shows.
Sure.
My first one is, one of my all-time favorites. They didn't make enough of them, Faulty Towers. it is just a classic, well written, and of course with John Cleese at the helm. Fernwood Tonight was another one that I really enjoyed the writing, and of course, if you want to talk about politically correct or whatever, All in the Family was one of my favorites. Not a big movie watcher, but those are three of mine, Mike.
John, excellent choices, and All in the Family. Oh my God! If you ever sit back and watch a clip of that on YouTube, you will be astounded. We let it air on network TV, eh?
I live on YouTube right now for those shows particularly. But even and another one that I caught last night was, and I had completely forgotten about it, and was the Newlywed Game with Bob Eubanks.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Some of the predicaments he puts them in with the questions to the contestants, just unreal.
I love it.
Anyway, those are three of my favorites, Mike.
Thanks, John. Great to hear from you today. And yeah, All in the Family. Kids, if you didn't know of it, go ahead, ask your parents, or check it out. You'll find some stuff on YouTube. It'll curl your hair. Ernie, good morning.
Hey, Mike. I don't know if you know this, but I'm the youngest of 9 kids, so I probably got to watch TV that I shouldn't be watching when I was that young or little.
Yeah.
But that's why I can relate to all these 80s shows. And so with me having little ones, I'm like, I want to bring it back. Like, instead of just Paw Patrol all the time or something like that, what's something I can feel like a kid again that they're old enough to watch?
Sure.
They're not quite old enough yet to watch the 18, but we have been doing some, obviously, Little Hobo, and we've been doing some Dukes. And
Dukes of Hazzard, really?
Yeah, so because, it's a family fun show. Obviously, they don't know about what the flag means and why I got pulled off the air. But anyways, besides that point, my wife rolls her eyes when she's putting Dana to bed, and when he's asking her questions, why were the cops chasing Daisy? What did Daisy's the nicest lady. What did she do, So when I have my kindergarten son ask her questions like that, it just gives me a laugh. Brings me back in my Cobra Kai. There's some weak seasons in there, but finish it off. It is a great ending, and I think it was fantastic. Like I said, I was hooked too when I first started. It got a little weak, but what a great ending and what a great nostalgic show.
I love it. Ernie, thanks for that. I'm really enjoying where I'm at. I think I've got a couple episodes to go, so I'm glad to know somebody else, because we had an earlier caller that was similar. Stick through to the end. It's going to be worth it. So far, it's doing very well. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio, Rogers TV. And we can carry this over into our next hour together, remembering those movies or TV shows from when we were kids that take us right back to that point in time. An update from the 570 News Center, and then open lines on your Talkback Hour. We continue the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Well, we were having so much fun in our last half hour with the Flipside, taking a trip down memory lane, those TV shows and movies that bring back all the nostalgic feels and transport us back to where we were when we first saw them, and maybe we watch them again and again and again. So we carry that over into our Talkback Hour this afternoon. Paul, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How you doing today?
Good, thanks.
Listen, as far as TV shows, In the Heat of the Night.
Oh, yeah.
One by Carol O'Connor.
Yep, I remember that one.
And for movies, one of the best family movies, entertaining for all ages, Secondhand Lions.
Secondhand Lions. I'm not familiar with that one, I don't believe.
You haven't seen that. You need to watch that.
Okay.
It's got a lot of great moral stuff to it and whatnot about hard work and everything else. And there's some fantasy in there. It's hilarious and great for the entire family.
Okay, Paul, thanks for that. Secondhand Lions. I don't want to watch a story, though, about people working hard, because I haven't worked a day in my life. Like, don't tell anybody, but I am the least hardworking person on the planet. Sit on my butt and talk all day. Don't let the secret out. Mark, good afternoon.
Yes, the original Superman, his name was Steve Reeves.
George Reeves.
No, it was George Reeves.
It was. I Googled it. I thought it was before, but I doubted myself.
Unfortunately, he committed suicide shortly after the show.
I do remember him dying by suicide, yes.
Yeah, and on The Lone Ranger, Tonto was Jay Silverhills, who was born in Brantford.
I knew there was a local connection there, but I couldn't remember. Nice, Mark. Good memory.
Anyway, just thought I'd fill it in.
Okay, thanks for filling it in. That's the great thing about that. Like, together, it's like cheating on your test in school. Kids don't cheat on your tests. But, if you ever cheated on your test, you get 3 or 4 people involved and you'll come up with the right answer eventually, right? We put all the pieces together there. And I went to George Reeves before when the Superman TV show, I think it was John that brought it up, right? But I doubted myself because Christopher Reeves, of course, famously played Superman in the movie. But yes, George Reeves, the original TV Superman, who later died by suicide. Mary, good afternoon.
Good morning, Mike with a mic. Oh, no, good afternoon, Mike with a mic.
I am still with a mic, and it is afternoon. They work me hard around here for a guy that doesn't work hard, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, The Young and the Restless.
Oh, my goodness. Listen, Mary.
Isn't that horrible?
Here's the thing. You could have started watching that as a kid, and you can still watch it today. How many years has it been on?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't watch it, but I always thought it was goofy when I had a chance because you could miss 2 months, 3 months. You didn't miss a thing.
It was the same for all of the soap operas, though, right?
Was it? I don't know.
Yeah.
But here's another one.
Okay.
You'll think I'm a bit silly. I liked Hammy Hamster.
Nothing wrong with Hammy Hamster, except that it was a hamster, like those little rodents. Yuck.
I know, but hey, from today where we sit in this world, Hammy Hamster was a nice thing.
I like it, Mary. Good job by you.
Bye.
Okay, have a great afternoon. Hammy Hamster and Davy and Goliath. Was it David and Goliath? But anyway, the claymation show. Similar. I remember times of day because they would come on close to one another. And since Mary brought up The Young and the Restless, I'm going to let you in on this little secret, okay? So my mom, and I was talking about this earlier when we talked about our trips that we would take to Central Fresh because we lived in the Mount Hope right up neighborhood, and we would cut right through Mount Hope Cemetery. Mom with the stroller, all the kids off to Central Fresh we would go. I was very fortunate. Grew up in an era where I had the stay-at-home parent. But Mom had her stories, she called them, which was the soap opera All My Children. She loved All My Children. And true as I'm sitting here, every day at 1 o'clock, when her stories would come on, she had to make sure she saw them. And so there were times, I remember, I'll never forget being outside in the wintertime, and we're at the door. Mom, let us in. We want to come inside. We don't want to be out here. It's cold. But she needed her hour. And she deserved it, too. We should have been outside, but that's what would happen because Mom had to see her stories. Send the kids outside, let them entertain themselves for an hour because she had to watch her All My Children soap opera. Loved it. Andre, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Just to go back, me is going back to UFC 1. I'm at 5 right now.
What? UFC 1? What are you even talking about? Like Ultimate Fighting Championship?
Yeah, it started in 1993 when the team, well, I'm not going to mention, won. But I went to listen to UFC, and now they're pretty high up there now. And so I had to go back because I'm following it a lot because I'm a big fan of Georges St. Pierre. So that's my big thing now is going back to that. I think there's like 135, I think. I'm not too sure.
Oh, my gosh. That's a lot of UFC. But you and my beloved, both fans of Georges St. Pierre. She was into it back then, too. It's a sport I could never get into. I loved boxing back in the day. I think I'd still love boxing if it hadn't become such a corrupt mess, but never could get into the whole MMA UFC thing at all. George, good afternoon.
Yes, I'm back.
You're back.
Chalk is listening to this because this one's for him. When I was in high school, as part of my part-time job, I was a Zamboni driver.
You were not.
It was the best until I did not know the other guy did not pull the goalie net out. I'm going behind the boards behind the net, not realize he didn't pull it out. That net became a pretzel. And did I ever hear about a $300 net? Well, back then, this is the early 80s. My boss just told me, you just ruined my $300 net. And that was the last time I was a Zamboni driver. I lasted for about a year or two.
That's a pretty cool claim to fame, George. Well done, sir.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, George. Going back to Gary Chalk with Living Retired this morning at 10:30 when Gary said that's on his bucket list. I got to fulfill that Canadian kid's dream. I think we all dream of it, right? I remember when I was a kid watching that ice resurfacer go around and around at intermission. Looked like a pretty cool thing to do, be the one in the driver's seat. And I got the privilege this past summer out in Elmira at Resurf Ice, where they make the Olympia ice resurfacing machine, a made in Waterloo Region success story. And not only did I get to see every facet of the production of one of those ice resurfacing machines, the Olympias, but they let me take two of them out for a test drive. Oh, baby, did I have fun booting around that parking lot on the Olympia ice resurfacing machine made right here in Elmira. The Mike Farwell Show and your Talkback Hour continues on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Right back to the phones on a very busy Thursday afternoon. Kyle, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, all this talk about the childhood TV shows. First off, just a little announcement for you, Mike. We're one step closer to owning the Cornwall hockey team for the OHL. We got a little sponsorship from, I got $5 last night from Plinko, so that's good.
Wait, what? What $5 from Plinko? What language are you even speaking to me right now?
That's sponsorship. Remember I was joking around saying, MasterCard will sponsor us, joking around saying I got accepted for a higher MasterCard. Same thing, Plinko. I put my money in. I got my money back so we could put that towards a set of pucks there for the team.
Were you on The Price is Right?
I could be.
What is Plinko?
No, it's a lottery game that you buy at the
one of those scratch tickets.
Scratch ticket. Yeah. Sorry.
You got to help me out here, Kyle. I don't play the lottery, so.
Okay. And then the second thing is my childhood. The movie that always brings me back. My friends in the States always joked around, and because my dad, I guess, was very laid back, they told me to ask my dad if they can take us to go see Scary Movie. So in grade 4, my dad took us to see Scary Movie. And then the TV show that always brings me back as a kid is Jerry Springer. I could watch that show even today. It still brings me back because, it's Jerry Springer, and I just love that show. So thanks, sir, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate the call. Just goes to show the generation gap. Jerry Springer was something we watched in college for kicks, and Kyle was a kid. And I love our regular loyal listeners who are with us 4 full hours every day, but sometimes you might feel like you're not in on the joke. So Kyle and I hatched a plan many moons ago to buy or bring the Ontario Hockey League back to Cornwall. I would love to see that happen. There used to be a team in the Ontario Hockey League called the Cornwall Royals, and I would love for them to come back to the league. So Kyle and I talked about that before to bring you in on the joke. He won $5, I guess, playing an instant lottery ticket. We're going to use that to support our dreams of bringing Cornwall back into the OHL. There you go. Brenda, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. When us kids were young, I remember watching the real Batman and Robin show because they were real characters back then.
For sure.
But when I got older, my dad enjoyed watching All in the Family between sporting events, so I would watch that with him. He really enjoyed that show.
I love it, Brenda. Those are 2 great examples, and All in the Family, both of those have actually come up before in this kind of nostalgic trip down our television past. And All in the Family as a kid, just imagine what you were exposed to from Archie Bunker. John, good afternoon.
Yes, the 2 I can think of is the Jackie Gleason show and the I can't remember the other one. Jackie Gleason, anyway.
With you mean the Honeymooners, like that?
Yeah, Honeymooners.
Yeah. To the moon, Alice.
Yeah.
All right, John. Thanks for that. It's a great memory. And Ed, who worked in sewage, he was a sewer worker, right? Exactly. Dallas. Good afternoon.
How you doing today?
I'm doing all right, my friend. How are you?
Not so bad.
Good.
Okay. Well, TV shows. one of my most favorite ones, and I haven't heard it mentioned today, is MASH.
Oh, my goodness. You know, I wish I had gotten into it more as a kid. I did not. And I always want to go back because it's highly regarded as one of the best ever, right?
Well, and, like, I was watching that show when I was 15, 16. I'm 60 years of age, so
Sure.
I got a couple years on you, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, MASH was one of my all-time favorite shows, and I still pull it up and watch some episodes once in a while. And, of course, a lot of the cartoons got taken off because they were deemed too rough or whatever. But Looney Tunes, we had the Looney Tune Hour.
Of course.
And that was fantastic. I used to watch that every day when I come home from school. We had 2 channels down home, on and off. That was it. So
I love it, Dallas. Thanks for that. All right. Enjoy your afternoon. Good to hear from you. Afif, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. So my movie isn't that good, but it's Die Hard because that's the first movie I ever watched as a kid.
One of the best action movies of all time, Die Hard. 100%. Great movie.
But my second one is something that nobody, I don't know if a lot of Canadian or American listeners have seen. It's Crystal Maze.
Crystal Maze?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that. TV show or a movie?
It's a TV show. It's
Okay.
It's a show where basically there are contestants. They go around and do different puzzles to get these crystals, and then at the end they have to jump and grab cash to win, basically.
You know what? I like the idea of jumping and grabbing cash. They should have one of those around here. Like, you know, how babies have the mobiles above their bed and, above their cribs, and it plays music and it spins around. They should have one of those in the hallway around here. We could all jump for some cash when we're at work. I'm going to bring it up at the next staff meeting. This is the Mike Farwell Show, your Talkback Hour, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. A busy day on the phones. I love it this way. Conversations are so much better when they're two-way like this. Francis, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. I have a few things. I grew up on a farm, of course, so both of my parents were at home, 7/24. So there's lots of learning things on the farm. But we didn't have a TV until I was about 8 years old. It wasn't really shows. It was like the Flintstones, the Barney Rebels, and also Tweety Bird with Sylvester the Cat.
Oh, yeah.
But the best movies of all movies was The Green Mile with Tom Hanks.
That is an excellent choice. But I don't think you were a kid when that came out, Francis.
Oh, no, I was much older. Yes, it's a great family show also.
Thanks, Francis. I appreciate it. Based on a Stephen King novel, which he released as a serial. There were 6 different smaller books all woven together as The Green Mile, which I agree is an excellent movie. Rockin' Ronnie, good afternoon.
Hi, Farzi. How are you?
Good, my friend. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. These are going way back in the day. Red Skelton and the Three Stooges.
Oh, yeah. Red Skelton, classic. One of the best comics of all time.
He was good.
He was.
We watched them, and we laughed and laughed as a kid, eh? Now, since that, through the years, we picked up some VHSs. Well, that's going back, too.
Sure it is.
And we put them on, and it's not even as funny as near as funny as it was when you were a kid.
Yeah, that's I get it for sure.
I know. And you were talking about Zamboni. Well,
Olympia, Ronnie, they're all Olympias, buddy.
Because I ran one.
Did you?
Yeah, up at the rec center in Waterloo in New Hamburg.
Nice job, buddy.
Well, when I retired, I was up there for I think close to 10 years. 2 in the old rink, and that's when they had the Olympia yet. You talked about the Olympia.
It's got to be an Olympia. Yes, sir.
Right up there and had a tour through the plant. And but when I ran it in New Hamburg in the old rink, if you remember that rink at all, it had kind of square corners. And when they taught me how to run it, they said when you come into the corner, You just got to give it a little more gas to swing it around.
Perfect. Just what you need. Rockin' Ronnie giving it a little more gas. I can just imagine how well that turned out. And as we're reminiscing on these TV shows and movies from our youth, The Honeymooners came up earlier. And, you know, Jackie Gleason and To the Moon, Alice, and his buddy Norton, the sewer worker. There's a connection to that story and that TV show and a local company that's been actually featured on this program. I'll fill you in on that as we continue with your Talkback Hour here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. So thanks to former Waterloo Mayor Dave Jaworski, following along with our little trip down memory lane here today and thinking back on those TV shows and movies that always transport us back to that time when we were kids and we could watch them again and again and again. The Honeymooners comes up with Jackie Gleason, and Jackie Gleason's character, of course, was a bus driver. His best friend, Norton, was a sewer worker, and it is based on that character, Norton, that Norton Engineering here in the fine region of Waterloo, and Barbara Robinson, the founder, who has been on the show sharing all kinds of important tips to us about, you know, keeping our homes safe from flooding, etc. That's where the name Norton Engineering comes from. Ed Norton, the character on The Honeymooners. So a little connection to one of the shows that you remembered and one of the businesses right here in the region. Funny how that works out, eh? Back to the phones here on the Talkback Hour. Bob, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Well, I have a couple of shows. One would be Gilligan's Island. I don't know if anybody brought that one up yet.
Longest 3-hour tour ever.
Yeah. And the Carol Burnett show.
Oh, my goodness. Remember how she always tugged on her ear as a little symbol to somebody? But yes, the Carol Burnett show, one of the all-time classics. Tim Conway on that show was so ding-dang funny.
And one of my favorite movies of all time was The Blob with Steve McQueen. It was just so silly.
Never saw The Blob, but if you want to talk about Steve McQueen, Bullet, and that classic car chase between the Mustang and the old Dodge Charger was incredible.
It was, yeah.
All right, Bob, appreciate that. Nice little trip down memory lane, the Carol Burnett show. We went to see Carol Burnett when she came to Center in the Square, and that was a lot of fun to take in for sure. Kevin, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Mike. Regarding, TV sitcoms and everything, I mean, it's so crazy. I mean, back in late 80s and all through 90s, if you notice, 90 or 95% of all the programs were funny. I mean, like, you come from work, you turn on the TV, and you laugh. Like, anything from Married with Children to Full House to Friends. I mean, they named Seinfeld, which is still, I'm watching every night as much as I can to make me feel better. But nowadays, I mean, you will start, especially tonight on Thursday, you start from Channel 3 and go all the way up. It's either about murder investigation, police, a firefighter, a lawsuit, lawyers. I mean, you named one funny program like a sitcom that is on TV right now, except the Goldberg, which is also refers to 80s. But what I'm talking about is that's why there is so much depression going on. You come from work and you turn on the TV, it's either news with depressing news, and either the programs are all about sadness, murder, investigation, abduction. I mean, what kind of TV show is there that makes you feel good? If somebody knows, please let me know so I can watch. But I cannot name even one single program that I turn on and I'm going to make me laugh. Except 10 or 11 o'clock at night on Fox, I'm going to watch my Seinfeld every night. But other than that, nothing else, Mike.
All right, Kevin, appreciate the call. That's why I'm glad we could do this today and give ourselves a bit of a break from it. But I would push back a little bit with the programming that you're seeing that is not exactly filling your bucket of joy. It's a whole chicken and egg thing, right? The networks will only program what people are watching. And I guess that's what the appetite is demanding right now. Tom, good afternoon.
Yeah, how are you, Mike?
I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, last time I said we don't have any allies, which is true. Like France and England never talk to Trump, what are they doing to Canada? The other thing is what's happening is our politicians, whether it's the premiers or the federal, they don't understand. It's not about the 25%. It's about that he wants to destroy the Canadian economy. So this is how they should act. They should try to get new places that they can do trade with. Like we had China. They used to buy a lot, but Trudeau put that lady in jail. And we lost. Same thing with India. We lost because they accused them of killing. And those are the only other ones that we can do trade with. Europe doesn't want our stuff. Japan, Asia, they don't want our stuff. China's the only one that bought. So we have to make repairs and go. But I hope they'll be equal to do it.
All right, Tom. Appreciate the call and the random insertion of a different thought on Talkback today. Ian, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike. So 3 shows that probably no one's mentioned. I don't know how popular they were. Airwolf.
Oh, my gosh.
Blue Thunder. And Moving On was a truck show with Claude Akins, and I can't remember the other guys.
Oh, Claude Akins was on, gosh, he played Sheriff Lobo.
Yes.
Yes, but I didn't watch Moving On. But when you mentioned Claude Akins, I remember that. Excellent. And see what I like about this, Ian, we must be of similar vintage because you're going back to the 1980s for this.
Yeah.
Late 70s? Yeah. And it's just, I'm thinking on what Kevin had just said and how, it was funny. We could always find the sitcom. When I look back at these shows, late 70s, early 80s, it just seems like such a simpler time, doesn't it? That's what I love about it, right?
Yeah. Just one other comment about Superman. The original Superman was George Reeves.
Yes.
And he was the father to Christopher Reeves.
Was he?
Yes.
Are you 100% sure about that?
I'd have to Google it, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure that's the lineage there.
Okay. I'll do some Googling, too, because I didn't think there was a relation, actually.
Yeah.
All right. Ian, thanks for the call.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You bet. Enjoy the rest of your day. It's just, I find it, and of course, I mean, when we look back on our own past, it's always through those rose-colored glasses. But let me tell you, the 80s were shiny, they were simple, they were fun. We didn't care about anything, right? We just wanted bright clothes and fast cars. The Talkback Hour continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. No relation, Ian. George Reeves, the original Superman on TV, and Christopher Reeve, without an S, who played Superman in the movies back in the 1970s. No relation between the two. George Reeves, Christopher Reeve. We continue your Talkback Hour with Greg. Good afternoon, Greg.
Hi, Mike. Time for my shows. You'll probably relate to some of these. Well, actually, right now I have a cable that's got 24/7 channels of certain shows, and I'm stuck on the Gilligan's Island, like someone else mentioned, Three's Company, and Scooby-Doo.
Oh, Scooby. Those meddling kids.
Yeah, especially the first 2 seasons were the good ones. They got a bit corny when they got too many characters introduced. But and then I've always been intrigued by the mystery concept. Now, 2 things. Remember the short-lived Hardy Boys series at night? Sean Cassidy and Parker Stevenson were Frank and Joe Hardy.
Do I ever? They did a TV movie, too, if I'm not... No, that was Parker Stevenson played Spider-Man. Forget that. Yes, I do remember it very well because I was a huge Hardy Boys fan.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I thought, okay, and then that seemed to stop way too soon. Like, I was enjoying it.
Yep.
And then, so back to the cartoons. For some reason, every time I talk about this, nobody but me seems to remember this, so maybe you do. There was Scooby-Doo, and then some spin-offs of groups of kids fighting crime. Do you remember Goober and the Ghost Chasers?
I do not.
Lassie's Rescue Rangers?
Lassie's Rescue Rangers.
And Clue Club?
Clue Club sounds vaguely familiar.
Okay, well, when you feel like it, Google those and see if the animated pictures that come up ring a bell, because they're all about like a Scooby-Doo kind of theme.
All right.
Kids solving, and with dogs in and stuff. So I don't know. Nobody else remembers them for some reason. And I'm not dreaming it. So,
well, we'll see. Maybe you are dreaming it, Greg. Maybe you are, but appreciate that. Maybe it evokes a memory for somebody else. Chris, good afternoon.
Yeah, it seems like your listeners aren't as old as I am, but I go way back, and it seems the corny stuff's coming way out there. Yeah, Superman, when it was in black and white way back in the day. The Monkeys.
Oh my gosh, the Monkeys! Yes,
the Monkeys, and the Daydream Believer was a pretty decent tune that they had out.
Sure was.
And like some of the new stuff, like I just heard, Three's Company and all that stuff. That's kind of newer, and that's still in. You can still get it on TV. It's in reruns.
Yes.
So I'm going way back, where you can't get the reruns much anymore, and I don't know what happened to All in a Family. Maybe not being put back on there because of the way that they produced the show and all that stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to get the Monkeys in there, and it's like the corny stuff. And anybody hearing my voice there, they'll say, "Yeah, the Monkeys, really?"
All right, Chris, thanks for that. Yes, put it in the Wayback Machine. We love it. Zoltan, good afternoon.
Mike, it is so nice to hear you again. Hey, Mike, somebody mentioned Claude Akins, and this is a dual thing, but it will be short. Number one, Claude Akins played a real jerk in the beginning of this movie. He turned out to be fantastic towards the end. He's just a good actor. And the movie was called Devil's Brigade, and it is actually a true movie, and it is the very first special forces in the history of the United States of America. And Devil's Brigade was half Canadian, half American. What cooperation we had then. Now, last but not least, my favorite all-time hero, Captain Chaos.
Oh, my goodness, Captain Chaos. I love it.
Okay, have a good day, pal.
Thanks, Zoltan. You too. I love how Zoltan starts with nice to hear you again. I haven't gone anywhere, Zoltan. Where'd you go? I'm here every day, 9 to 1, don't you know? Dan, good afternoon.
Hey, how are you, Mike?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
I only have a few minutes, but I just wanted to touch on two shows that I'm sure you remember, and they're two of my favorites.
Sure.
Columbo.
Oh, yes.
And my favorite of all time, The Rockford Files.
Oh, with James Garner.
Yeah, wasn't he great?
Oh, so good. So good. My dad loved The Rockford Files, too. And Columbo, was it with Columbo? I just have one more question. Was that kind of the shtick with him?
And before I go, just one more question. Remember?
Very well played. I get it. Yes. The rumpled trench coat of Columbo. And just one more question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Dan. Thanks for those memories. And by the way, if you didn't get Zoltan's Captain Chaos memory, I've actually tried to find this on YouTube, and I find little clips. I actually remember finding a link that said it was the full movie, but it wasn't. Captain Chaos was Dom DeLuise in the Cannonball Run. Oh, my gosh. Now, did they end up doing 3 Cannonball Run movies? I can't quite remember, but forget about it. Forget it. Like the original, I want to see it again. I haven't been able to find it anywhere, but gosh. And Captain Chaos was Dom DeLuise's alter ego, if you will, and Burt Reynolds played the lead, and he and Dom DeLuise were in the same vehicle in this race, and oh my. And one of my favorite things about it is the credits of the movie ran over the outtakes, and just absolutely hilarious stuff.
Hello.
Joanne, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. You have to remember Wayne and Schuster.
Oh my gosh, Wayne and Schuster. Sure, why not? We had the Monkeys a minute ago. Why not go back to Wayne and Schuster too? You betcha.
Of course. That's all I have to say. They still make me laugh in my memories.
Joanne, I love to hear that. Great reminder. We had Red Skelton come up before. Good comedy stands the test of time. Wayne and Schuster, another great example. We continue the Talkback Hour here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. About 4 minutes away from 1 o'clock, your update in the 570 News Center, and then Now You Know with Rob Snow. Let's get back to the phones on our Talkback Hour. Ernie, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike. Just nostalgic moments that I'm coming up with. It was Saturday night. My dad and I would always watch Bugs Bunny, and then Saturday night's main event would come on with wrestling. I remember as a little kid, Demolition came on, and I was so scared. I was just scared, and he would ask me, "Are you okay?" And I just asked Dad. I'm like, "Dad, can you beat these guys up?" And he said, "Of course." He's like, and I remember thinking that's where I think the term "my dad is bigger than your dad" came from. And I remember thinking as my dad, I don't have to worry about Demolition or anybody. My dad can beat up Demolition. And so little Vane the other day asked me if there's ever been any Giants. And I'm like, you know what a perfect time to show him the Andre Giant versus Hulk Hogan match. And I remember doing that. And we're watching it, and he got a little bit nervous when Andre was winning, and he just looked at me and he says, "Dad, could you beat up that Giant?" And I look at my wife and I said, "You know what, Zane? Of course." You know what? And I don't know if that makes me a bad dad. My dad won Father of the Year that night, and I'm not saying that I did that night, but I said, "You know what? Don't worry about it. I could beat that Giant. I couldn't slam him, but you know what? I could beat him." So.
That's funny. I could beat up Andre the Giant. What an interesting choice, too. The Hulk Hogan Andre the Giant wrestling match. Instead of putting on, like the Princess Bride with Andre the Giant, he was a little gentler in that one, but nonetheless. Tom, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Real good, thanks. How are you?
Good. I would like to tell you about the Rifleman black and white TV show.
Chuck Connors.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Love it.
Yeah.
And it's still on.
Is it really?
Yes. I've been watching it on Roku, and I love that show. And I'll watch it over and over and over again.
I love it. Very cool, Tom. Thanks for sharing that one. We're going to squeeze in one more. Mark, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike, again. I got two for you, Mike.
Okay.
The Monsters.
Oh, yes.
And the Addams Family.
Yes, of course. You can't have one without the other, can you?
Okay, so did you watch those, Mike? Do you remember them?
Absolutely, I did.
They were very funny.
They really were. And you know what's even funnier? You talk about the Munsters, and Fred Gwynn played Herman Munster, right? Is that yeah, I'm pretty sure I got that right. And Fred Gwynn, also the judge on My Cousin Vinny, which was on the other day, and I watched a bit of, and it never ceases to get me. Like one of the absolute best ever movies. Hilarious. And Marissa Tomei won an Oscar for it. Go figure. All right, that is all the time we have together today. And I'm sorry that it's come to such a quick end because it's gone by fast. It was a lot of fun today. Love the interaction. So I'll tell you what, how about this for a plan? We do it again tomorrow, okay? We'll get together here at 9 o'clock, mark it in your calendar, set an alarm if you need to, and we'll reconnect and have some conversation. Fridays mean our Friday 4 Roundtable, the Coaches Show, Council Chambers, free phones Friday. Oh, my goodness gracious. We'll have a blast starting tomorrow morning at 9, okay? Now you know with Rob Snow is coming up to take you through until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Devin Robertson is our guy. Wait, no, Jen Tan. No R. Jen Tan. I'm getting used to Jen, who just joined our station. Jen Tan is our gal on the other side of the glass. My name is Mike Farwell. Bye for now.